Chapter 2274. Setting up a mechanical school. The Hill looked at Meg, who was sitting across the desk, with a surprised expression. She knew that Meg had always been supporting teacher Luna in setting up Hope School. She had also donated a sum of money to that education fund. She had only received a brief from Luna a few days ago and knew that Hope School was about to start. However, from what she knew, Hope School was more of a charity school. It took in those children from poor families who couldn't go to school. While eliminating illiteracy, it also taught them some life and professional skills so that they could have a foothold in society. The idea that she and Meg came up with just now was to set up Hope School's mechanical school as the top mechanical talent nurturing base on the Northern continent, and use it as a foundation to promote the development of the Northern continent. From a steam engine to the color printing machine, Meg's amazing performance was a little playful. At this moment, the Hill seemed to see the determination to do something seriously in Meg. The Hill didn't know what other things Meg would create or what kind of talents he would bring up, so she couldn't miss such an opportunity. "Mr. Meg, just tell me what you need. I will do my best to support you," the Hill said to Meg sincerely. "All right, then I won't stand on ceremony." Meg nodded with a smile. He liked rich women like her. They were rich, beautiful, and obedient. The Hill brought Meg to the steam locomotive manufacturing base. The best mechanical designers and engineers in Chaos City, or even the entire Northern continent, were gathered there. Mechanical design and manufacturing was a broad and vague concept to them before this. A craftsman usually had to design items and manufacture them simultaneously. Without either ability, they couldn't become an outstanding craftsman. After experiencing the huge project of designing and manufacturing the steam locomotive, some new concepts were being accepted by them, and their old ideas and thinking were greatly impacted. For example, design and manufacturing could be a cooperative relationship. The designer would be responsible for the design, and the skilled craftsman would be responsible for the implementation of the design. The advantage of this was that the barrier to becoming a designer was lowered. Even a woman who couldn't swing a heavy hammer could become a designer. This also allowed the blacksmiths to focus more on production and forging. It also allowed some races with outstanding talents in forging and manufacturing, such as demons and orcs, to have greater room to display their talents. This was a huge blow to the craftsmen of the Northern continent. It could even be said that this was a revolutionary blow. What brought about all these changes was the blueprint of a steam locomotive that everyone worshipped, and this blueprint came from Meg. As a result, Meg's popularity was extremely high among the proud designers in the base. "I heard that Master Meg is here. He's coming here with Miss Hill." "Really? Then let's go and take a look." 2 days ago, the chief engineer said that he wanted to invite him to teach us. Let's go together." The news that Meg had come to the base spread like wildfire. Except for some engineers who couldn't leave due to work, the rest of the engineers all went to watch the fun. When Miss Hill brought Meg to the engineering department of the base, she had a weird expression on her face when she saw the engineers craning their necks with expectant faces. She wouldn't even take a second look at this group of men who were obsessed with machines. But when they heard that Meg was coming, all of them acted as if their sweetheart had come. Was that man really that attractive to them? "Mr. Meg, you're finally here again." Chief Engineer Burrell went forward and shook Meg's hand with a hint of resentment in his agitated expression. "I'm here with Miss Hill to tour the base today. At the same time, I have something to discuss with the chief engineer." Meg nodded with a smile. He knew that this chief engineer of the steam locomotive wasn't interested in him. Instead, he was interested in the mechanical knowledge in his head. "Miss Hill." Burrell then greeted Miss Hill. But soon, he looked at Meg and said, "Mr. Meg, if you have any requests, just let me know. I'll do my best to help you with anything that I can." "I'm right here. Shouldn't I be the one to make the decision?" Miss Hill cursed silently. Why did this man seem so smitten when he saw Meg? "I'm planning to set up a mechanical school in Hope School. I'm currently short of teachers, so I'm looking for a few outstanding teachers from Chief Engineer Burrell," Meg said straightforwardly. Anyway, Miss Hill had already agreed to this matter. He was here to select people. "I see." Burrell was slightly taken aback. He subconsciously looked at Miss Hill. Although he was the chief engineer of the steam locomotive project and had a lot of power in the base, he couldn't just say whatever he wanted in front of his boss when it came to the flow of talents. The surrounding engineers were also dumbfounded. They didn't expect Meg to come here today to poach people. At present, the steam locomotive project was progressing smoothly. The railway to the dwarves was being laid, and the improved version of the steam locomotive was also being developed. Everyone could see that a great invention was about to be born and carried forward. No one was willing to leave at this time. I've already talked to Mr. Meg. I'm very supportive of the establishment of a mechanical school in Hope School. Miss Hill nodded slightly and said, under the leadership of Mr. Meg, this school will research the most cutting-edge mechanical technology and explore a new path for mechanical design and manufacturing. Mr. Meg's leadership. Research the most cutting-edge mechanical technology. Open a new path. Miss Hill's voice wasn't loud, but it was like thunder in the ears of the engineers. Everyone's eyes lit up. They looked at Meg with a burning gaze. The great steam engine project came from Mr. Meg. He had shown amazing talent in the field of machinery and had won the admiration of all the participants of the project. Now he stood up and said that he wanted to explore a new path for mechanical design and manufacturing. What did that mean? This would definitely be an event that would be left in the history of machinery on the Northern continent, and the participants might have the chance to be famous for eternity. Burrell looked at Meg seriously and said, of course I have to participate in such an important event. Mr. Meg, I'm willing to join Hope School and become an honorable teacher. Miss Hill glanced at him. He was the chief engineer of the steam engine project. If he left, the whole project would have to stop. Meg didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He shook his head and said, I don't dare to accept you. Miss Hill won't let you go either. Chapter 2275. Blair looked at the hill and saw a handsome face with a faint smile. He felt the sharpness in the eyes and shrank his neck. He turned his gaze to the eager engineers behind him and said, don't say I didn't give you a chance. Those who are willing to participate, step forward. Almost all of the engineers took 2 steps forward. It seems like you can steal all my talents at any time. The hill looked at Meg with a hint of resentment. Meg didn't expect these people to be so enthusiastic, but since they were willing, it was easy to handle. With the hill and Blair accompanying him, Meg chose 10 engineers from the group. 5 of them were engineers with high talent in mechanical design, and the other 5 were engineers with outstanding talent in forging, materials, and so on. They were all young, with the oldest being only 25 years old. They weren't considered the most experienced engineers. What Meg valued was their relatively clean foundation. This made it easier to instill his set of mechanical concepts. They wouldn't be trapped by inherent thinking and have conflicts in subsequent teaching. But they also had a good foundation. Even if school was about to start, they would have something to teach the students. Mr. Meg, are you sure you want to choose these 10? Blair looked at the list for a while and couldn't help but ask Meg how he was inferior to them. Yes, but I don't know if they are in charge of important work or if they could be removed from the steam locomotive project. Meg was there to choose, but the premise was that he couldn't affect their normal work progress. Not to that extent. They are in charge of more marginal work. They could be replaced. Blair shook his head. Mr. Meg, although these 10 engineers are going to Hope School, I plan to continue paying them as teachers. Consider it my contribution to Hope School, the Hill said to Meg. Meg looked at the Hill and smiled. How could he not see through the Hill's intentions? These 10 engineers would go to Hope School. They didn't take the school's salary, but received money from Buffett banks. What did this mean? It meant that they were always from the Hill. However, Meg came to the Hill with the intention of cooperating. Hill had generously handed over the talents and was even willing to pay them handsomely to lighten Hope School's burden. Why would he not do such a thing? She was a good business partner. She was rich, knowledgeable, and not greedy. Okay, I thank you on behalf of the children. Meg smiled and nodded. Meg left the announcement of the results to Blair. Meg told them to report to Hope School at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning and take part in the school's test. Meg didn't stay for long either. After promising Blair that he would give a lecture next week, he left the base and rushed to Hope Academy. Meg found Luna and told her about his plans to establish a mechanical college. Have you already found the teachers? Luna was stunned for a while before she came back to her senses. She looked at Meg in surprise. It took her a while to digest the fact that Meg had suddenly established a college. What was even more surprising was that he had already gradually formed a team of teachers for the mechanical college. Yes, they're all excellent young engineers. They are young, energetic, and professional. Meg smiled and nodded. And Miss Hill is willing to pay them, so they don't need to be paid by the school. They only need to be provided with basic working meals. The Hill opened her mouth slightly. After a while, she bowed slightly to Meg and said gratefully, "Thank you very much for your help to the school. Teacher Luna, you are welcome." Meg quickly held her and said, "But they are not professional teachers and have not undergone any training. So, I want to postpone the classes for the mechanical college for a month. I will train them so that they can be qualified for this position. These children will have to go through the most basic classes after they enter the school, starting from literacy and arithmetic. Other than vocational training, the more profound advanced classes may only start after a few months," Luna said. "That's true. We have to eliminate illiteracy first." Meg nodded thoughtfully. He realized that he seemed to have neglected something. Although Hope Academy had a large number of students this time, they were basically children who had not attended school for a single day. Children of all ages were running around every day to fill their stomachs. They were illiterate. Even if they entered the school, they had to start from eliminating illiteracy first. However, it was not a big problem. He could continue with his gourmet training, and the teachers of the mechanical college could settle down and learn how to become teachers in 2 to 3 months. They could also do some academic research during this time. Wow, this is Mr. Meg's restaurant? I've heard that this is the best restaurant in Chaos City. It really lives up to its name. Hee hee. We made a small fortune 2 days ago. Of course, we have to choose a high-end and classy place to treat our leader to a meal. Leader, you're in front. The members of the Rose Mercenary Squad escorted Chi-Will to the back of the long line in front of Mamie's with smiles on their faces. They were in a good mood. Although they had gone through a life-and-death situation 2 nights ago, they were saved by Lord Alex. Not only did they survive, but they also made a fortune with the help of the golden-eyed white tiger. Each of them received more than 200,000 copper coins. This was a huge sum of money for low-level mercenaries like them. They usually could not earn so much in a year. They had been recuperating for the past 2 days. They were almost fully recovered today, so they invited each other out for a celebration. Sivir was wearing a leather jacket and a pair of leather pants. The tight leather pants accentuated her voluptuous figure, and her red hair was draped over her shoulders as she stared at Mamie Restaurant's signboard with her brown eyes. This was not her first time eating at Mamie's. It was her second time. Although she admitted that Mr. Meg's food was delicious, it was too expensive. After the first time, she could not bear to eat it again. She did not sell the golden-eyed white tiger's demon core. She planned to keep the demon core that was worth more than 2 million copper coins as a souvenir. Perhaps she would never have the chance to see that man again in her life, but this demon core would let her remember that moment and encourage her to work hard to become stronger. She had been in a daze for the past 2 days. Last night, she even dreamed that she had become his maid, serving him meals and sleeping. She was not that kind of person. Chi-Will took a deep breath and told herself, "Forget him, Chi-Will. He is not a man you can covet." The door opened, and Meg walked out with a smile. Chi-Will's gaze fell on Meg. She paused, a little dazed. Somehow, she felt that he was familiar and gradually merged with the figure in the mask. "Stop. Stop." Chi-Will patted her head. It was over. Her hallucinations seemed to be getting worse. She actually merged Mr. Meg and Lord Alex together. This was unreasonable, but Mr. Meg's words seemed to be worth considering. He seemed to be single too, right? Although he had a child. The child was quite cute. Chapter 2276. Meg also noticed the members of the Rose Mercenary Group. Looking at their youthful faces, he also smiled. It seemed that their injuries were almost healed. Meg's eyes met with Chi-Will's. He felt that her eyes were a bit strange. Did she recognize him? He only wore a mask that day and did not disguise himself. Did she see through him? Meg did not panic. He smiled calmly and welcomed the guests into the house. "Mr. Mac, we're here for dinner," Monkey said with a smile. He had fainted that day, but he seemed to be in good spirits today. He should have recovered. The members of the Rose mercenary group also greeted Meg. After all, they had fought together before. Meg responded with a smile. He had a good impression of this low-level mercenary group. Of course, it was not because of their leader's good figure, but because of their comfortable and harmonious atmosphere. Leader Chi-Will, long time no see. Meg smiled at Chi-Will. Chi-Will was dressed more casually today, but she was still wearing a leather jacket and pants. In this world, there were not many people who could look good in leather. Chi-Will was one of them. Her soft leather pants were tailored to her body, perfectly outlining her curvaceous figure. She had long, muscular legs, beautiful curves, and a perky butt. It should be able to hold coffee. Long time no see. Chi-Will thought of the messy thoughts in her mind and blushed. She nodded unnaturally and lowered her head, walking quickly past Meg. Meg raised his eyebrows. From Chi-Will's expression and emotions, she probably did not recognize him. Otherwise, she would not be so calm. However, she was not in a natural state. She looked more like a shy girl. Could it be that she was charmed by my handsome appearance? Meg thought. He did not expect Miss Chi-Will to be such a shallow woman. The members of the Rose mercenary group sat down at 2 separate tables. After entering the dining hall, they quieted down and sat down obediently. They had all heard about the rules of Mamie's. Previously, they hadn't thought much of it, thinking that it was just a restaurant where people drank and ate meat. How could it not be bragging? However, when they were queuing up earlier, they saw the experts lining up in an orderly manner, and there was no lack of legendary mercenaries among them. They immediately reached a consensus that it would be better to be obedient. As soon as they sat down, a middle-aged magician walked up to them with a smile on his face. "Sorry to disturb you. Are you from the Rose mercenary group?" The members of the Rose mercenary group looked at the newcomer, but they couldn't tell how strong he was. They all looked at Chi-Will. Chi-Will stood up and looked at the person. "May I ask who you are?" This magic caster was very powerful, so Siver's expression became a little more cautious. She did not think that the Rose mercenary group was so famous that a powerful magician would want to meet them, so she was even more vigilant. "You must be the leader of the Rose mercenary group, Chi-Will. I am Camaro, an apothecary. I heard that the Rose mercenary group was recently selling materials from the level 7 golden-eyed white tiger. I didn't expect to see you here at Mamie's, so I took the liberty to ask Leader Chi-Will if you have the demon core of the golden-eyed white tiger. I am willing to buy it at a high price." The magician looked at Chi-Will. The members of the Rose mercenary group subconsciously looked at Chi-Will. The demon core of the golden-eyed white tiger was a gift from Mr. Alex to their leader. They were lucky to be alive, and they were happy to get a few 100,000 copper coins. Naturally, they did not care about the demon core. However, the leader did not say much on the way here, nor did he say if the demon core had been sold. They did not expect a buyer to come knocking on their door. "Sorry, we do not have the demon core of the golden-eyed white tiger." Chi-Will shook his head. "You should have seen it. If a mercenary group like ours were to encounter a living golden-eyed white tiger, we would only end up as food." The magician was startled. His gaze swept across the mercenary group, and his eyes revealed a hint of disappointment. As Chi-Will had said, the strongest person in this mercenary group was Chi-Will, who was a level 4 magician. The others were even weaker. If a mercenary group like this were to encounter a golden-eyed white tiger, they would not be able to kill it. They would only end up as food. Siver's words made it clear that the Rose mercenary group was lucky enough to encounter a golden-eyed white tiger that had just died. It was a great bargain for them. However, something as precious as the demon core would most likely be taken away by the powerful magician who killed the golden-eyed white tiger. "Sorry to disturb you," Camaro said and turned to leave. "Leader, are you not going to sell the demon core?" Monkey asked in a low voice. "Yes, I plan to keep it as a souvenir." Chi-Will nodded. "Then, are we going to hide the fact that we were saved by Master Alex?" Dennis asked. This was something worth bragging about. He planned to tell his grandchildren and great-grandchildren about it in the future. Everyone also looked at Chi Will. You can say that. This is a favor worth remembering. Chi Will nodded. But don't mention the demon core. Everyone nodded knowingly. If it was something that a high-tier magic caster coveted, naturally, they could not reveal it casually. Meg watched the failed deal from the sidelines. He was a little surprised that Chi Will did not sell the demon core. A 7th-tier magic beast's demon core and a precious golden-eyed white tiger's demon core at that. If sold, the price would be enough for her to end her mercenary career, open a small shop in Chaos City, and find an honest man to marry. Since the demon core had been given away, Meg naturally did not care what Chi Will would do with it. He was just curious. Big Sister Chi Will. Amy saw the Rose mercenary squad and ran over in surprise. She jumped into Chi Will's arms and rubbed her head against the soft leather cushion. Then, she looked up at her and said, "When are you going to bring me to fight monsters? I'm super good now." Chi Will hugged Amy and smiled subconsciously. He thought for a while and said, "That depends on when Mr. Meg will entrust us with a mission." The little one was soft and small and very comfortable to hold in his arms. Her delicate and cute appearance made him unable to let go. Chi Will even thought that it would be great if this baby was his. He would not have to give birth to it. It would be best if he could just hold it. "I see." Amy thought seriously for a while and nodded. "Then I'll go find Father later and ask him to entrust you with a mission to catch a celestial monkey." Chapter 2277. Everyone in the Rose mercenary squad looked at each other with strange expressions. The Sky Quando monkey that AI Me spoke of was an extremely rare magic beast in the Magic Beast mountain range. It was said to be a palm-sized monkey with golden fur all over its body. It looked cute and clever, so it was very popular with the rich. Rich people all wanted to raise one, but don't underestimate this little thing. It was a 3rd-tier magical beast, and it was very talented in stealth and escape. Normal mercenary squads couldn't do anything to it. Moreover, they were usually active in the depths of the Magic Beast mountain range. It was very difficult to find them in the outskirts. Amy's small request really stumped them. "It's not easy to catch a Sky Quan monkey, but if we meet one next time, I can bring you a little owl," Chi Will said with a smile. "An owl?" Amy looked back at Ugly Duckling in surprise. She waved her hand and said, "Ugly, no thanks." Amy played with Chi Will and the others for a while, then ran to the kitchen door. She looked at Meg, who was busy grilling skewers, and said, "Father, when can I go hunting magical beasts with Sister Chi Will and the others again? I want to go to the Magic Beast mountain range." "In a few days." "What's so fun in the Magic Beast mountain range?" "Let's go to the beach and play with the sea beasts," Meg said with a smile. Amy was now much stronger than Chi Will and the others. It would be very difficult for them to bring her into the mountain range. "Then, will Sister Chi Will come?" Amy asked again. Meg thought about Chi Will in a swimsuit, sniffed, and shook his head. "We're not that close. It's not appropriate to invite her." "It's okay. I'm very close to her. If you're embarrassed, I'll invite her," Amy said, and then ran to Chi Will. Meg looked at Amy's back with a gratified expression. "She's worth teaching. Sister Chi Will, we're going to catch some sea beasts in a few days. Do you want to come with us?" Amy made her way over to Chi Will with an expectant look on her face. "Sea beasts?" Chi Will was slightly stunned. "Yes, we're going to the Endless Sea realm. Do you want to come with us?" Amy nodded. Chi Will came back to her senses. It seemed that Meg was planning to bring Amy and the others to the Endless Sea realm to play, so the little guy invited her to come along. After what happened the day before, the Rose mercenary group had unanimously decided to rest for 7 days, so she was a little tempted by Amy's suggestion. She had grown up in Chaos City and become a mercenary. She had constantly ventured into the mountain range of magical beasts and lived a life of danger. She had never seen the sea before. However, this was still an invitation from Child. "I don't think it's appropriate for me to go," Chi Will said as he looked at Amy. "I'm here to hire you. Here's the deposit." Amy took out a dragon coin and placed it in Chi Will's hand. "We'll meet at the restaurant in 3 days." Before Chi Will could refuse, Amy had already run off. Chi Will looked at the dragon coin in her hand and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This was the first time she was hired by a 4-year-old girl. Did Mr. Mac ask little Amy to invite the captain to go on a trip? Monkey laughed. I think it's possible. Scott nodded. You're the best at flirting. Let your daughter help you flirt. Scott gave him a thumbs up. Shut up. Chiwil rolled her eyes at them and flicked the dragon coin in her hand. She couldn't help but wonder if this was Amy's idea or Meg's. She wasn't worried that Meg would do anything to her on the trip. Although his food was delicious, he was just a chef after all. Even if there was a fight, she would definitely be the one on top. Furthermore, she recognized Meg's character, so she didn't have to worry about him bringing Amy along on the trip. Perhaps they were planning to explore some unknown and risky places, so they wanted to find an experienced mercenary to go with them to avoid some dangers. Chiwil felt that she was close to the truth and was very happy that her professional ability was recognized. Amy ran to the kitchen door and gave Meg a thumbs up. Meg smiled. This little fellow was really something. They were going to the boundless sea realm for a relaxing vacation. They wanted to enjoy the sea breeze and sunshine, go surfing and swimming. Of course, there was no problem with having a beautiful lady with them. Meg stared at Chiwil for a while. He wasn't being obscene. He was measuring her size. As a native of Chaos City, she probably hadn't seen the sea before, so she probably didn't know what a swimsuit was. Look, he was so considerate. He even thought of a swimsuit for her, and even measured her size. This was called being obscene. Chiwil seemed to have sensed something, and turned to look in the direction of the kitchen. What she saw was Meg's side profile, which was cooking seriously. His handsome side profile was focused and serious. He was a little handsome. Vivian came alone today. Luna was too busy, her dad was too busy, and her mom couldn't be bothered to line up. Hence, she, who seemed to have the most free time, could only eat the grilled fish alone. Luckily, she knew the people who were sharing the table, so it wasn't that awkward. Vanessa looked at Vivian, who was focused on the grilled fish, and persuaded. Big sister Vivian, eat more vegetables. Don't just eat the grilled fish. It's all right. You don't have to worry about me. I'll just eat the grilled fish. Vivian waved her hand and continued to focus on her grilled fish. This medium grilled fish with 2 bowls of rice was just her appetite. Queen Syndra looked at Vivian with a smile and said, She's just craving your grilled fish. Vivian, if you don't eat what she ordered, she'll be too embarrassed to eat your grilled fish. Abraham covered his mouth and laughed at the side. He had already seen through it, too. Otherwise, Vanessa wouldn't have persuaded others to eat. Vivian finally turned around and looked at Vanessa thoughtfully. She pondered seriously for a while and seemed to have made an important decision. She nodded and said, Then you should eat the grilled fish too. You can eat a little. As she said that, she picked up a piece of the steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers and ate it quickly. All right. Vanessa's eyes lit up, and she eagerly picked up a piece of fish with her chopsticks. Then, she immediately picked up the bowl, took the fish carefully, and put it into her mouth. A satisfied smile immediately appeared on her face. The crispy fish skin, the tender and smooth fish meat, the flavorful sauce, the unique aroma of grilled fish, and the exceptional spicy flavor suddenly exploded in her mouth. This spicy grilled fish is so delicious. Vanessa opened her eyes with tears shimmering in them. It was too difficult to eat with her mother and uncle. The insanely spicy dish had actually been excluded from their list, and that made her lose a lot of happiness. In the past, she could still be willful, but now that she was facing 2 people at once, she couldn't even resist. Big sister Vivian, let's eat together when you have time. It's my treat. Vanessa invited Vivian. You like grilled fish too? Vivian asked first. Yes, I love it. Vanessa nodded. All right, let's eat grilled fish together if we have time. Vivian immediately nodded. She knew that Vanessa wasn't short on money, and she liked rich friends who liked to eat grilled fish. Chapter 2278. After the dinner service ended, Meg and his family of 4 had a family meeting while having hot pot. Amy, Hope School and Chaos School will be opening in a few days. Which school do you want to go to? Meg asked as he placed the cooked duck intestine into Amy's bowl. Amy leaned forward and blew on the duck intestine. She suddenly looked up and asked, Is school starting again? The little fellow had been learning magic with Crassus and Julian these few days, which meant that classes had started earlier. However, the school hadn't officially started yet. Yes. Meg nodded. Teacher Luna won't be going to Chaos School anymore, right? Amy asked again. Teacher Luna is the principal of Hope Academy now. She has a lot of things to do, so she won't be teaching mathematics at Chaos School anymore. Meg nodded with a smile. However, she will continue to be a teacher at Hope School. Then, Amy thought seriously for a while before saying, I want to go to Hope School. I like Teacher Luna's classes. If you go to Hope Elementary, Daphne and Ignatsu won't be your classmates anymore, Meg reminded her. It's okay. I can play with them after school, Amy said with a smile. Also, Jessica will be going to Hope School too, and there will be many friends I used to know. It will be very interesting. All right, I will go to Chaos School tomorrow and help you with the transfer procedures. Meg nodded. He respected the child's choice. However, Crassus and Julian were taking up Amy's time like crazy, so she probably wouldn't have time to study normally this semester. Hope School's learning progress started from literacy, so it wouldn't affect Amy's learning progress. At most, Amy could make up for it in the future. And, do you want to go to school? Irina asked Dan, and, who was taking small bites of the beef, was taken aback. She quickly swallowed the beef in her mouth and looked expectant. However, she quickly pointed her throat and shook her head. Meg frowned. He could tell that and was looking forward to going to school, but she was reluctant because she couldn't speak. Meg and Irina had tried many times to find a cure for Anne's inability to speak, but to no avail. The system couldn't give the exact reason either. It could only attribute it to the fact that Anne was separated from the Great Old One, and ordinary methods wouldn't work. There were no vocal organs in Anne's body, so she couldn't form any sound. Meg had originally planned to ask the system to find a speaker for her and from a high-level civilization, the kind that could be directly installed and used. However, due to She's appearance, this plan was shelved. The printing machine could still be explained by digging it out, but it was a high-grade sound generator, and it was even connected and used. This was very difficult to explain. Now, Meg had changed his mind. He planned to build a good relationship with She first, then try to get a speaker from her. The Ancient One's technology was so advanced, so their medical standards must be very high. It shouldn't be difficult to get a speaker. And I can sign you up first. If you're willing to go to class, then go. If you're not, you can wait until we treat your throat. Meg looked at and said with a smile, and thought about it and nodded. It's no big deal that you can't speak. Many people have mouths, but they never speak human words. How can they compare to our little and who's beautiful, kind, and good at drawing? Irina patted Anne's head lovingly and said proudly, Yeah, drawing is a very powerful form of expression, Meg agreed. If Sister Anne goes to school, you'll be very popular with your classmates. You're so good at drawing. Everyone will admire you, Amy said with her little head nodded. The smile on Anne's face became more confident, but she still didn't make it clear that she wanted to go to school. After eating hot pot, the two children chased Ugly Duckling to play outside the restaurant. Meg and Irina sat in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, warming themselves by the fire and listening to the melodious music. Does Hope School still need teachers? Irina asked. Why? Do you want to be a teacher too? Meg tilted his head and looked at Irina's side profile. If I become a teacher, I don't know if I should teach them how to use a folding chair or a magic caster's staff. Irina smiled. I think the folding chair is a very powerful weapon. It's worth promoting, Meg said seriously. There are still many outstanding talents among the Night Elves. If Hope School needs them, I can let them try to be teachers. Irina sat up straight and looked at Meg seriously as she said, Actually, I also want to do some education for the Night Elves. Many elves don't even know how to speak the common language because they've been working all the time. This has a huge impact on their integration into Chaos City. So, you want to let some Night Elves become Hope School's teachers first, and then let them nurture the Night Elves and teach those elves? Meg was deep in thought. Yes, Irina nodded. Hope School will always lack good teachers. There are indeed many outstanding talents among the Night Elves. After professional training, they can become outstanding teachers. Meg smiled and said, How about this? You compile a name list tomorrow, and I'll go look for Luna to arrange a time for her to interview them first. After that, we'll discuss how to train them. I've already gotten Ashley to compile it a few days ago. I'll give it to you tomorrow. Irina nodded. Being the head of the household should be harder than being the queen. Meg put his arm around Irina's shoulder gently and looked at her with heartache. Ever since the night elves were established, Irina had spent most of her time on them. When they were first established, she was leading the night elves to survive in the cracks. After they entered Chaos City, she was thinking about how to let them establish themselves. Now, she was thinking about how to let the elves integrate into Chaos City and live a normal life. She had been worrying a lot. I think it's quite interesting. Irina smiled with a relaxed expression. However, some of them might return to the Wind Forest in the future. Sally, that last, did better than I expected. Are there any new developments in the Wind Forest? Meg asked curiously. Irina said, Helena is in seclusion and left everything to Sally to handle. Elliot, who was originally restricted to stay in the territory, is getting restless again. The first thing Sally did when she returned to the Brewster family was to remove Elliot from his position as the head of the household and put him under house arrest in the castle. Her actions had also shocked all the other big families that were about to make a move. She's basically in control of the Wind Forest now. Chapter 2279. Meg was a little surprised to hear Irina's words. In his impression, Sally was still a girl who looked cold on the outside, but was gentle and loving on the inside. He didn't expect that in just half a year, she had really grown into a princess who could control the situation in the Wind Forest. What was even more unexpected was that Irina actually praised her so much. I have to admit that she actually knows how to balance and control the various forces better than I do, and I've always liked to convince people with reason, Irina said honestly. Meg nodded. He knew that was the logic of physics. So, if nothing goes wrong, she will become the next queen of the elves? Meg said, I haven't seen a more suitable candidate at the moment. Irina nodded. At least, I'm not interested. Interesting. I feel that the greatest achievement in my life might be opening this restaurant and recruiting such a group of service staff, Meg said with a smile. Our delivery person has already become the queen of the Twilight Forest. The second employee will become the queen of the elves. The service staff may become the queen of the Moon Nation. The atmosphere manager is the escaped princess of Lantis. The waitress has already become the queen of the vampires. Angela is trying to restore the glory of the succubi. And the hot pot queen is ready. Meg couldn't hide a smile anymore. This was really something worth bragging about. Irina scrutinized the smug Meg and asked, So, why are they all beautiful girls? The smile on Meg's face gradually stiffened. He thought seriously for a while and said, I am a person who is faithful to one. If the first one is a girl, it will always be a girl. What about Shirley? She sneaked in by accident. Meg pondered and changed the topic. Oh yes, we will go to the Boundless Sea Realm for a team building 2 days later. You should be free, right? I have to go to the Wind Forest. You guys go ahead. Irina shook her head. Did something happen? Do you need me to go with you? Meg asked with concern. No need. I'm just going to verify a small matter. The Wind Forest can no longer stop me. I can come and go as I please. Irina shook her head. Meg nodded. Then I'll leave Azzi to you. With it around, I feel more at ease. All right. The next day, Meg made another trip to Hope School and submitted a list of 200 people, expressing the Night Elves application for teaching in Hope School. Luna was also shocked when she saw the list of names. After hearing Meg's words, she digested them for a while and nodded. How about this? Tomorrow, I'll organize a large-scale job fair for the teachers of the school. We'll choose 20 of the 200 candidates to join Hope School. As for the remaining 180 candidates, I will arrange them into 3 classes. The experienced teachers of Hope Academy will train them so that they can meet the basic teaching requirements. However, the school is about to start, so this kind of training may only be arranged at night and on rest days. All right. I thank you for your help on behalf of the Night Elves, Meg said gratefully. I should be the one thanking Mr. Meg for sending talents to the school again. Also, it's our original intention to help more people. "It's just a small matter," Luna said with a smile. After coming out from Hope School, Mag went to the textile factory again and relayed Luna's words to the night elves so that they could get ready. Then, he printed 10,000 copies of Miss Black Cat and got the night elves to escort them to Rodu. He had already received news from F that Miss Black Cat was selling like hotcakes. The 10,000 copies that he had prepared previously couldn't resist their enthusiasm at all, so he had to prepare the stock in advance. If it was a normal picture book, Mag would probably control the quantity to maintain a certain level of value. However, Miss Black Cat was a little different. This was an excellent picture book and also an advertisement for the opera Miss Black Cat. 10,000 copies seemed to be a lot, but the circulation was not enough. Furthermore, there was naturally no reason to stop a business that could easily earn tens of millions when the market response was good. Currently, he had already earned back the copyright fees, and the rest would be pure profit. "Leader, there's so many audience members outside today. They are all asking when we will resume business." Yes. Even I was recognized when I walked outside. They have never come to watch the opera, so why are they so enthusiastic? It feels like our Black Cat Song Troupe is about to take off. The actors of the Black Cat Song Troupe gathered in the temporary leader's office and sat around a broken wooden table. They couldn't hide the excitement on their faces. It was the first time in a long time that they felt the attention. Vicky's expression was still calm, but the uncontrollable smile on her lips exposed her current mood. Yes, although the Black Cat Song Troupe was still in the midst of renovation and upgrading, there were more and more audience members outside the opera house asking about the opening time. There were even signs of them gathering. The reason was very simple. It was because of the picture book Miss Black Cat. In just a few days, thousands of copies of the Miss Black Cat picture book had been sold. Almost every day, the Titan Tavern was in a state of being sold out as soon as it was released. This not only made the Titan Tavern's popularity soar, but also brought positive feedback to the Black Cat Song Troupe in the past 2 days. The vivid and interesting picture book, coupled with the explicit opera advertisement behind the picture book, aroused the curiosity of the audience of the picture book about the opera. However, the Black Cat Opera House was in the midst of renovation and couldn't perform. This aroused the curiosity of the audience, so it was especially lively outside the opera house these 2 days. It could be expected that when the opera house's upgrade was completed and they reopened, there should be a good number of audience members. Just thinking about this made Vicky's mood surge. Since the establishment of the Black Cat Song Troupe, their most popular performance had 89 audience members, most of whom were neighbors. After the opera house's upgrade, it could accommodate 1,200 people at the same time. She just wanted to know if there would be a day when all the seats would be full. Vicky looked at the crowd and said seriously, "In 2 days, the opera house's upgrade will be completed. Everyone, hurry up and rehearse. Strive to be in your best condition to welcome the first performance of the Black Cat Song Troupe in the new opera house." Everyone stopped laughing and nodded solemnly. Everyone knew in their hearts that they had endured for so long and finally had a chance to see the end of it. They must seize this opportunity to be worthy of their years of hard work and perseverance. If the premiere is a success, I'll treat all of you to a big meal. Vicky smiled and announced loudly, "Roast lamb." Chapter 2280. Meg rode his bicycle back to the restaurant leisurely. When he passed by the ice cream shop, he saw a flash of light in the alley next to the ice cream shop. He couldn't help but stop his bicycle out of curiosity and walked into the alley to take a look. A petite figure stood with her back facing the entrance of the alleyway, chanting an incantation toward the wall. Golden light flashed from the wand in her hand before dimming again, but her back was still as resolute as ever. Meg stood at the entrance of the alley and watched this scene with a smile. After some time, a golden light finally lit up from the magic wand in her hand, and then hit the wall in front of her, leaving a faint golden mark on it. A smile appeared on Jane's face, and she put down her right hand that was a little sore from holding the magic wand. Then, she wiped the sweat on her forehead with her left hand and slowly turned around, only to be startled by the person standing behind her. "Boss!" Jane looked at Meg and calmed herself down. She was a little surprised and a little embarrassed as she said, "When did you come?" "I've been here for a while. I saw that you were so engrossed in your practice, so I didn't disturb you," Meg said with a smile, and looked at Jane approvingly. "You're getting more and more familiar with the holy light spell. You're practicing it well." Light element magic casters were very rare. After Jane was brought back from the Demon Islands, she was taught by Irina personally and was now a level 2 light element magic caster and could cast the elementary holy light spell. In this world, not everyone was a genius. Most of them were ordinary little demons who worked hard like Jane. Of course, at least she had the precious talent for light element magic and was lucky enough to meet Irina, a light element magic caster, to teach her personally. Jane's face was slightly red. She didn't expect Meg to have been here for a while, but she felt rather happy to be praised by him. In the past, she only thought about how to survive and racked her brains to survive. She never thought that she would become a magic caster one day and learn how to cast magic. "Jane, we're going to the Boundless Ocean in 2 days. Do you have any relatives on the Demon Islands? If you do, we can bring you to see them," Meg said to Jane. Previously, he had brought Jane back because he felt that this girl was really pitiful and could be considered obedient and clever. However, as a person living in this world, they more or less had to have some concerns. Otherwise, they would be like duckweed, drifting without anyone to rely on. Jane thought about it seriously and shook her head sadly. However, when she looked at Meg, her eyes quickly lit up. She smiled and said, "Boss, you're my family, my only family." Meg looked at the clean smile on Jane's face and was slightly taken aback. He immediately nodded with a smile. "Okay, then you go wash up first. I'll go back to the restaurant first." Jane nodded and looked at Meg's back as he turned to leave. Suddenly, she said, "Boss, can I ask you for a favor?" Meg stopped and looked back at Jane. Jane looked at Meg. She seemed to have gathered her courage and said, "I want to learn how to cook crayfish from you." Meg was a little surprised that Jane also wanted to learn how to cook, but he still nodded. "Okay, if you want to learn, I can teach you at any time." A happy smile appeared on Jane's face. "Thank you, boss. However, I want to know why you suddenly want to learn how to cook crayfish." Meg looked at Jane and asked. Jane lowered her eyes a little embarrassedly and whispered, "I want to open a crayfish restaurant in the future, just like the one you opened before." Meg nodded with a smile. "That's good. Then come earlier tonight. When I cook crayfish, you can watch from the side. First, understand the basic process of making crayfish. Later, I'll teach you in detail." He was very supportive of his employees wanting to start their own businesses. For example, he was very supportive of Reina wanting to open her own hot pot restaurant. He was optimistic that she would become the hot pot queen of the generation. Seeing how serious Jane was in learning light magic, Meg thought she would be determined to become an outstanding light magic caster. He didn't expect her dream to be to open a crayfish restaurant. Of course, this was nothing. Wasn't he also opening a restaurant? Irina was still the director of the textile factory. Jane nodded. Her face was flushed with excitement. Actually, becoming more powerful wasn't that attractive to her, because she knew that she could never become more powerful than Princess Irina. However, she was looking forward to opening her own crayfish restaurant, just like Boss and the rest. She could entertain customers, manage the restaurant, and help those in need to the best of her ability. This feeling, just thinking about it, made her excited. Meg bade farewell to Jane and returned to the restaurant. However, he met an unexpected guest at the entrance. "Mr. Meg, you're finally back," Hayter said to him with a smile as he stood at the entrance of the restaurant. "Dean Hayter, why are you here?" Meg alighted from his bicycle and looked at the vice dean of the Chaos School of Machinery in surprise. The old dean was half-bald, and his Mediterranean Sea had expanded a little. He was wearing a long black robe and still looked serious. "I heard you're planning to set up a new school of machinery in Hope School, so I specially came to have a chat with you," Hayter said. "You're really well informed." Meg smiled. He had just gone to look for Luna in the morning and didn't expect Hayter to come to the restaurant to look for him right after he left. Meg was quite respectful to this old pedant. This kind of person easily overlapped with some of the teachers in his previous life. They weren't very utilitarian, but they were very passionate about the research of technology. Hader smiled and said, I have nothing to do during the holidays. I happen to be chatting with my old friends in Hope School. I heard the news from Teacher Luna and happen to have some other questions to discuss with you. I wonder if you're free? It won't affect your business, right? It's all right. It's still early. Let's talk inside. Meg opened the door and carried the bicycle into the restaurant. Hader followed Meg into the restaurant and stared at Meg's bicycle. He only retracted his gaze when Meg parked the bicycle behind the counter. However, he still asked curiously, is this two-wheeled bicycle easy to ride? It's very easy to ride as long as you have a simple grasp of the balance. Meg nodded. It doesn't look complicated. If it's easy to grasp, it'll be a very popular transportation tool. Many people in Chaos City still rely on their legs to get out of the house, Hader said thoughtfully. Meg admired Hader even more now. He was right. The bicycle was indeed very suitable for transportation in Chaos City now. Chapter 2281. The streets of Chaos City extended in all directions, and there were many alleys of different sizes. However, compared to other cities, Chaos City was a very new city, as it had been built over 100 years ago and expanded from nothing. Therefore, its urban planning and roads were much better than other big cities on the Northern continent. However, Chaos City was a very large city, and there were horse-drawn carriages everywhere on the streets, which provided a lot of convenience for people without horses. However, most ordinary people couldn't bear to pay the exorbitant carriage fees. In order to rear a horse in Chaos City, not only did one have to pay an exorbitant sum of money to purchase the horse, one also had to build a stable for it and feed it every day. The cost was extremely high, and it wasn't something that an ordinary person could afford. However, bicycles were different. Apart from the cost of buying the bicycle and a certain degree of wear and tear, there were almost no other expenses. There was no need to feed it, and there was no need to consider its feelings. You could ride it whenever you wanted. When you didn't need it, you could just throw it into the warehouse and take it out in a few years. Why don't you try throwing a horse into the warehouse for a month? If bicycles could be mass-produced and the cost could be reduced to a level that ordinary people could accept, it would make many people's lives much more convenient. Hader was a practical scientist, so when he saw the bicycle, he thought about how it could be widely used to make the lives of ordinary people more convenient. Meg admired this kind of pragmatism. Technology could change people's lives, and that was the value of the existence of scientists. Yes, I also think that this is a transportation tool that is worth promoting. Meg nodded with a smile and gestured for Hader to take a seat. He brewed a pot of tea and sat down across from him. Mr. Meg, do you also have plans in this area to mass-produce this bicycle? Hader looked at Meg expectantly. I might do this in the future, but I don't have the time and energy to follow up on it now. You know, inventing something and mass-producing something are two completely different things. Meg poured him a cup of tea. Hader was slightly taken aback, and then a smile appeared on his face as he nodded in agreement. That is indeed two different things. As the vice dean of the School of Mechanical Engineering, Hader had also participated in many projects. It was indeed a very time-consuming and energy-consuming task. For example, the two-wheeled car didn't look complicated and didn't involve any other complicated power sources. However, there were hundreds of parts on it. It would be a huge project to take them apart one by one and standardize them for mass production. Not only did it consume a lot of energy, it also consumed a lot of money. Meg's eyes lit up. But now that I think about it, I can't consider letting the teachers from the School of Mechanical Engineering research on the mass production of bicycles. He actually had an idea long ago, but he was too lazy to do it. However, now that the mechanical school team in Hope School had been assembled and the soldiers were all gathered, it would be a waste not to use them. Our mechanical school. Hader suddenly realized that the mechanical school that Meg was talking about wasn't the Chaos School's mechanical school. Instead, it was the newly established mechanical school in Hope School. Hader's expression became complicated. When he heard that Meg was going to establish a mechanical school and was intending to participate in it, he wanted to find out what kind of role Meg was going to play in this new mechanical school and what kind of development he was going to expect. Now, it seemed that Meg's role was going to be the dean, and he was starting a big project right off the bat. If the mass production of bicycles was successful, it would definitely be a big project that would affect many people's lives. To be honest, he was a little jealous. Meg saw through Hader's thoughts and found it funny. However, he didn't point it out. He took a sip of tea and asked, "Dean, why are you here today?" "Oh, it's like this. I've been paying attention to the establishment of Hope School. I've also talked to Luna about the establishment of the mechanical school. However, it was not easy to recruit teachers, so it was put on hold. I didn't expect that Mr. Meg would suddenly gather a team and establish the mechanical school as soon as school started. So, I wanted to have a chat with you and see if there's anything that you need help with," Hader said. Meg nodded seriously. "You don't say. I really do have something that I need your help with." "Go ahead." "Actually, I poached this team from Miss Hill. They were in charge of the steam locomotive project previously. They are all very talented and have good learning abilities. They have a lot of potential. However, they have never received any teaching experience before and were recruited at the last minute. It's very difficult for them to impart their professional skills and knowledge to the children. Luna is going to let them attend other teachers' classes and receive training from experienced teachers. However, I feel that if they want to improve quickly, they still need the guidance and classroom learning from experienced teachers of the same specialization. So, I want them to attend classes at Chaos School's mechanical school when school starts so that they can quickly learn how to become qualified mechanical teachers," Meg said sincerely to Hader. Hader looked at Meg in surprise. In his opinion, geniuses like Meg were usually aloof and proud. He didn't expect him to want those teachers to come to Chaos School to learn. Meg might be a mechanical genius, but he wasn't a teacher. He couldn't approve of a team that was formed at the last minute wanting to support a school and teach the students. He was worried that the teachers weren't professional enough. That was the reason why Hader came here. "I can't make the decision on this matter, but I personally agree with it very much. Let me go back and discuss with the dean to see how we can strengthen the communication between the two schools." Hader nodded with a smile. "Don't worry. Even if the dean doesn't agree, this old man can contribute all the experience in my head to that group of young people. Then, I'll thank you here first." Meg picked up his tea and toasted Hader. "Anything that can help the children is what we should do." Hader took a sip of tea and smilingly said, "However, I would also like to invite Mr. Meg to teach the teachers in our school. The steam locomotive has already started running on the railway that connects Chaos City and Vic Mountain. I heard that the railway to the dwarves is also being built. As the designer, they would like to hear the story of the steam locomotive from you." Well, Meg pondered. He was very aggressive on the internet, but he still felt a little awkward if he really went up to the podium to talk to a group of people. However, Hader had just agreed to help train the teachers, so he couldn't reject him. He could only bite the bullet and nod. Chapter 2282. Meg and Hader made an appointment and basically confirmed the communication channel between the teachers of the two academies. Hader then chatted with Meg about some issues related to the steam engine for a while. Meg promised to take him to visit the steam locomotive base when he was free, so he left with satisfaction. Meg watched Hader leave and closed the door. Hader was actually very close to inventing the steam engine, but that kind of approach could be achieved in a flash of inspiration, or it could be missed for a lifetime. In the afternoon, Meg received news from the Night Elf construction team that the comprehensive building project had been completed and the fences had been completely removed. Meg was not in a hurry to check and accept it. Instead, he waited until the evening business hours were over before going to the site. A 4-story building stood next to the 2-story restaurant, looking quite spectacular. With the help of the moonlight, he could still see the pillars and eaves carved with exquisite patterns. They were as beautiful as exquisite handicrafts. With such skills, it's a pity that you're not a handicraft worker, but a construction worker. Meg sighed in admiration. Elves were indeed artists. There were security guards in the school, but Meg directly climbed over the wall and entered the school. He opened the lock on the hall on the first floor. The first floor was the practical teaching hall, but it was now an empty hall with an area of 500 square meters. The floor was paved with square and flat marble. System, you can now deliver the goods. Meg snapped his fingers. With a ding, sets of metal stove sets with a metallic luster appeared in the hall. They were arranged in order, and there were more than 100 sets. In the blink of an eye, the originally empty hall became a professional teaching hall. The neatly arranged metal stoves glowed with a silver light. There were oil lamps hanging on the wall, but there was a switch that could be quickly extinguished and lit. Kerosene only needed to be added regularly. Although the brightness was not as good as lighting, it was more suitable for use. There was no need to waste time explaining. Meg looked at the majestic practical teaching hall and nodded with satisfaction. He seemed to have foreseen the scene of teaching here in the future. It was necessary to get a loudspeaker. The lights were on all the way from the hall on the first floor to the second floor. Meg went upstairs and looked around. The multi-purpose classroom on the second floor had tables and chairs, and it looked like a classroom. The teacher's office on the third floor was decorated simply and generously. Because the space was large, every single office was equipped with a small lounge. It was a very user-friendly design. Meg had thought that he would not be the only teacher in this training center in the future. He couldn't guarantee that he would always be in Chaos City, so he had to nurture at least 2 or 3 teachers to manage the daily operations. Raina was a good candidate, but she was planning for a second hot pot restaurant and was busier than him. Among the staff in the restaurant, Phyllis had already mastered the art of barbecue skewers and was qualified to be a part-time barbecue teacher. Meg quickly toured the complex. Before the security guards woke up, he turned off all the lights and quietly left the building. After putting the key on Luna's desk, Meg left a note for her and went home. Luna rushed to the school early in the morning. She was going to organize a large-scale interview today to select 20 out of the 200 night elves to be the reserve teachers of Hope School. She came to the office to get the name list and organize a morning meeting first. Then, she noticed a bunch of keys on the desk and the note under the keys. Teacher Luna, the chef's practical training center has been completed. Please check it. The familiar handwriting was written by Meg. She had received the news of the night elf construction team's news yesterday afternoon. However, this project was managed by Meg, so she didn't participate in it. Now that Meg had put the key in her office, it should be completed. It had only been 4 to 5 days, and the efficiency was amazing. Luna took the name list and held the key in her hand. After hesitating for a while, she decided to take a look at the practical training center before the morning meeting. Principal. When Luna went out, she bumped into Hilla, who was holding a stack of documents. These were sent over by the night elves. They are the personal information of the elves who will be participating in the interview today, Hilla said. Put this in the meeting room first. We will study it during the morning meeting later. Luna nodded slightly. I want to go to the chef's practical training center. Chef's practical training center? Hilla paused and suddenly came back to her senses. Are you talking about the beautiful building next to the restaurant? Yes. Was that really built by Mr. Meg? It was completed in just a few days. Hilla had a look of disbelief. If you are so curious, put down the documents and come with me to take a look, Luna said with a smile. Okay, right away. Hilla jogged to the meeting room at the end of the corridor and then followed Luna down to the restaurant. Hope School had not started yet, but there was a morning meeting today. So many teachers had already arrived at the school. At this moment, many teachers were surrounding the building next to the restaurant and looking at the exquisite and magnificent building in front of them. This was a building that was a perfect combination of stone and wood. It was mainly light gray and had a stable yet modern feel. The exquisite wood carving skills were also full of effort. Chef's Practical Training Center. Sigh, it's a pity that this building is not used to teach magic. Forget it. Magic is not compatible with this building at all. I think it's more suitable to be used as a teaching building for the children in the lower grades. It's lively and lively. The children will definitely like it. I think it's quite suitable to be used as a chef's practical training center. The children can directly eat the dishes they make here at the restaurant next door. They don't even have to worry about wastage. It's a pity that the door is locked. I wonder what's going on inside. In such a short time, they probably haven't even completed the basic renovations, right? The teachers were discussing and were all curious about the inside of the practical training center. If it's with me, if the teachers are interested, we can go in and take a look together. Luna walked over with a smile and waved the key in her hand. Principal, is the practical training center really completed? Mary walked forward and looked at Luna curiously. She knew very well that this chef's practical training center was only built temporarily after Mag came to take the teacher's qualification test a few days ago. It had been less than a week since then. For such a huge project, just the tables and chairs inside alone were already uncountable. The others also looked at Luna curiously. I would like to know the answer to your question too. Luna smiled and walked forward to unlock the door. Then, she pushed open the door of the practical training center. Chapter 2283. The door of the practical training center was pushed open, and sunlight shone in. The eyes of all the teachers standing at the door lit up. This was a 500-square-meter hall. What was even more shocking was the neatly arranged sets of cooking utensils. The metal cooking utensils were arranged neatly like soldiers, glowing with a bright silver glow. The cooking utensils, cutting tables, and sink were all available. Pots, bowls, ladles, and basins were all available. Moreover, there was a knife rack on each of their cutting tables with 3 knives on it. Everything was the same. All of them were in complete sets, and they filled the entire hall. And, at the very front, there was an independent set of cooking utensils. It should be the teacher's seat. Gulp! Mary swallowed her saliva and said in shock, "This is too awesome." The other teachers' expressions were similar. They were all stunned by the scene in front of them. "Isn't this a little too extravagant for a place to learn how to cook?" a teacher said softly. The other teachers also had strange expressions when they heard that. This is the practical training center built by teacher Meg himself. All the expenses were paid by him. "I don't think this is extravagant, but professional," Luna said loudly. All the teachers stopped their discussion when they heard that. They had heard many rumors about that teacher Meg. They all knew that he was the best chef in Chaos City. He was rich, kind, and caring. It was naturally a good thing for the children in Hope School that he built such a teaching building on his own. After that, Luna and the others went up to the second floor to visit a few comprehensive classrooms. The door to the teacher's office on the 3rd floor was locked. Luna looked at the key in her hand. She didn't bring them to the restaurant. Instead, she announced that the tour was over and everyone should go back for the morning meeting. During the morning meeting, everyone checked the resumes sent by the Night Elves. They only read half of it before they fell silent. "Principal, I don't think it's appropriate to choose 20 people," a teacher said to Luna. "I don't think it's appropriate, either. Can't we take all of them?" an old teacher asked seriously. They were too outstanding. That was the conclusion that everyone reached after reading the resumes. Everyone on the list of 200 people sent by the Night Elves was a talent. Their average strength had already exceeded the 6th tier. They were magicians, assassins, sharpshooters, apothecaries, healers, plant magicians. They had everything. This was a talent that Hope School had a hard time attracting. At least among the teachers they had recruited so far, there were very few such talents. Luna was also a little surprised by the Night Elf generosity. She had heard from Meg that the Night Elves wanted to use these people to learn and teach, and then nurture the overall quality of the Night Elves. However, he didn't expect Princess Irina to have such courage to send out the most elite and outstanding talents of the Night Elves. Luna nodded and said, "I also think that we can keep them as much as possible. After they get used to teaching, we can greatly expand the upper limit of our Hope Academy and open up a series of classes that were temporarily put on hold." The addition of this group of Night Elves was equivalent to bringing in a batch of elite soldiers to Hope School. The benefits were self-evident. Talents are worth cherishing. However, we are choosing teachers for the children. Talent and character are indispensable. I hope that all the teachers will still follow the process of the interview and seriously and cautiously review every teacher who may come into contact with the children, Luna added. The excitement on the faces of the teachers present quickly disappeared, and they nodded solemnly. This interview lasted for an entire day. All 200 elves were interviewed, and the results were announced on the spot. Other than the 5 who were judged to be unsuitable to be teachers because of their character, the other elves passed the interview. The elves chosen by the Night elves were even more outstanding than the simple conditions listed on the resumes. The elves' long lifespan, smart minds, and excellent learning abilities made it easier for them to be qualified as teachers. Also, their humility was an important reason why they were easy to get along with. "We've picked up a treasure." An old teacher walked to Luna's side and whispered with unconcealable excitement on his face. "With the addition of this batch of talents, our Hope Academy has taken a big step forward in catching up with Chaos School." Luna also couldn't hide the joy on her face. She smiled and said, "I still need all the elders' guidance." That old teacher nodded and said, "You don't have to say that. The few of us have already discussed it. In the next 3 months, as long as we don't have classes, we can give them training and lessons so that they can get used to the classroom as soon as possible and learn how to become a real teacher." Luna walked out of the conference room and encouraged the elves who participated in the interview. She welcomed them to Hope Academy and made arrangements for their upcoming work. The 20 slots were directly changed to 195. However, before they were approved by the teacher panel, they had to undergo training and learning and couldn't start teaching. As for their salary, Luna decided to give them the same salary as the other teachers. Ashley, who was leading the team this time, walked over from the side and said to Luna, "Principal Luna, thank you very much for your trust in us. However, we night elves don't need any salary. You can keep this money for the children's other expenses. You only need to provide us with 3 meals a day." But Luna hesitated. Ashley smiled and explained, "We are here to learn, and your highness also wants to do something for the children. Their salary will be paid by the textile factory." Luna nodded thoughtfully and gratefully said, "Thank you very much." 200 teachers with a salary of more than 10 million copper coins a year was undoubtedly a huge sum for Hope Academy. "You're welcome," Ashley said with a smile. At the end of the long day, the exhausted teachers had dinner in the restaurant and went home respectively. Luna came out of the restaurant and smiled as she looked at the sunset and Hope Academy that was covered in a layer of golden gauze under the setting sun. "I didn't expect that my dream back then would come true so soon," Luna murmured softly. Everything was ready. She just had to wait for the children to start school 2 days later and welcome the first batch of students from Hope Academy. Back then, she could only use her meager salary to buy some food for the wandering children. She also thought that one day they would be able to sit in a clean classroom and read and write like the children in Chaos Academy. Now, her dream was about to come true. How should I thank Mr. Meg? Without him, there wouldn't be Hope Academy. Irina looked at the Chef Practical Training Center in a daze, and the sentence that Vivian always said suddenly popped up in her mind. If you want to thank him, marry him. If you don't even have the determination to marry him, what's there to thank him for? Chapter 2284. Father, are we leaving tonight? Should I ride Ozzy there, or take the flying restaurant? Amy asked expectantly as she came back from school at the magic potion shop next door. She ran to the kitchen door and looked at Meg, who was making tofu pudding. Meg looked back at Amy with a smile and said, "Many people are going, so we're taking the flying restaurant. We can also take a nap on the way, and we'll be there the next day when we wake up. I've invited Daphne, Jessica, and Ignatsu. They'll be here in a while. Is that okay?" Amy asked again. "Have you told their parents about this?" Meg stopped what he was doing and asked Amy. Amy was stunned for a moment and then shook her head. "No, that won't do. If they go out with us without informing their parents, their families will definitely think that they disappeared, and they'll be very worried." Meg shook his head. Amy looked a little anxious when she heard that. Then what should we do?" "What do you think we should do, Meg?" Meg asked with a smile. Amy thought about it seriously and said, "Should we bring their parents along? That's not a bad idea." Meg nodded. "But we're the restaurant's employees. We're going on a vacation and team-building trip together. It doesn't seem appropriate to bring so many people." Amy's eyes lit up, and she said, "Then I can tell their parents that their friends are going out with us. I'll protect them. What if they don't believe you?" "If they don't believe me, I'll show them a rock as big as a millstone with my chest," Amy said with a serious face. Meg was touched by the little one's serious expression. He thought that if she really did that for the parents, the children's trip would definitely be put on hold. As a parent, it was only right for him to inform the children's parents, but he really couldn't let go of the work on his hands. Amy, let me accompany you to meet the parents of the children. I will make them feel at ease. Gina walked over and patted Amy's head with a smile. Really, Sister Gina? Amy looked at Luna in surprise. Of course, when have I ever lied to you? Luna smiled and nodded. Then let's go now. They're almost done with school. Amy grabbed Gina's hand and walked toward the entrance of the cafeteria. Meg shook his head with a smile and continued to grind the tofu. With Gina around, there was no need to worry. Her affinity was not only effective for the children. Her pure smile could purify and cleanse the soul, making people involuntarily trust her. People with this kind of smile tended to be successful in the sales industry. Meg did not feel too burdened by the addition of 3 children at the last minute. As long as Amy could have more fun, it would not be a problem at all. The Demon Islands was not a good place, but as long as he was there, it was a vacation spot. Gina and Amy returned to the cafeteria before dinner. They also brought the 3 children, Jessica, Daphne, and Ignatsu, over. Oh, Amy, it doesn't matter if there's a lot of food. I just like the dining atmosphere at your house. Can I come over often in the future? Ignatsu took a bite of the red braised pork. The fat on his face jiggled happily, and the little bean sprouts on his head spun around. You're just craving Amy's good food. Daphne rolled her eyes at him in disdain, but she couldn't bear to stop eating. She was chewing the meat with relish. Amy, are we really going to see the sea? You mean the boundless sea with a lot of seashells on the beach? Jessica's mind wasn't on the food as she whispered into AI Me's ear. Amy swallowed the meat in her mouth, nodded, and said, Yes, we're going to see the sea. We can pick up shells on the beach, catch crabs, and even go into the sea to fight sea monsters. Sea monsters? The 3 children all had fearful looks on their faces. Don't worry, I'll protect you. I'm super fierce. Amy reached out and patted Ignatsu's shoulder, looking like a big brother. Ignatsu looked at her and thought seriously for a while. He then turned to look at Meg. Uncle Meg still looked safer. Oh, right. Isn't Big Sister Camilla at the Demon Islands? Are we going to visit the vampires this time? I heard that the castle they built on the cliff is super cool. Yabamiya said. Castle? It sounds cool. Aren't only princes and princesses living in castles? Amy looked surprised. She looked at Meg and said, Father, let's go to Big Sister Camilla's castle to play. It must be super fun to play hide and seek there. There were skeletons everywhere in the castle, and the children next door were scared to tears. Hide and seek must be really exciting. Meg nodded with a smile. Okay, I'll take you there. Dinner passed with Amy teaching the 3 children about the seaside. After dinner, Amy took the children upstairs to play, while Meg and the others had to finish the day's business first. After opening the door for business, Meg went out with a smile. He greeted the customers and then welcomed them in. Gloria, who was standing in the line, attracted his attention. Gloria was wearing a white down jacket, and her light blonde hair was tied behind her back. She had a slim figure and delicate facial features, and she was still very eye-catching in the crowd. She didn't come alone today. There was a family of 4, and there was also a dignified old man, Jeffrey Moreton. It wasn't the first time Meg met the head of family Moreton, but it was the first time they met at Amy's. His impression of this old man was that he was an old-fashioned and stubborn old man with some bad cognitive habits, such as prejudice and arrogance against half-breeds. At first, he was still thinking about how to overthrow family Moreton's control over the Aiden Chamber of Commerce and change some of the Aiden Chamber of Commerce's provisions. He hadn't done it yet, but he had already settled family Moreton's successor and had established a close relationship with Miss Hill, a strong competitor for the president of the Aiden Chamber of Commerce. Therefore, when the new president of the Aiden Chamber of Commerce came in spring, regardless of whether it was Miss Hill or Gloria, he could change the prejudices to a certain extent through his relationship with them. For example, the employment discrimination provisions of half-breeds, which should have been abolished a long time ago. Mr. Meg. Gloria smiled and greeted him. Gloria. Meg smiled and nodded. He clearly felt that Jeffrey looked at him very seriously when he passed by him. Meg's expression didn't change, and he simply nodded slightly. Chapter 2285. It seemed that Gloria's position as the successor of family Morton was very stable, and she was deeply trusted and doted on by this control freak. That was why he was allowed to come to Mamie's for dinner. Meg had watched Gloria grow up. From an ugly girl who had no self-pity or self-confidence to a female boss who took off her veil, her transformation was very difficult, but her steps were firm. She was able to go from being the eldest granddaughter who no one thought highly of to defeating Cyril, who seemed to have a stable position in the family, not because of her looks and sweet mouth, but because of her own ability. It seemed that the stubborn old man Jeffrey had already accepted the fact that women could also inherit the family business and make the family stronger. Gloria's ability to surpass the heirs of the three big families by a few streets on the hill was a gem. Her suede clothing had already begun to monopolize the middle and upper-class women's clothing. A sea of blue was clearly visible. Instead of giving the family business to a prodigal son like Cyril, it was better to give it to Gloria so that she could have a better future. Suede's clothes were all designed by him. Jeffrey sat down and looked at Gloria softly. Yes, Gloria nodded. She didn't hide this from Jeffrey, and Meg had personally agreed to it. I didn't expect a chef like him to have such ingenious ideas. Jeffrey smiled. He was indeed a little surprised. He had investigated Meg before. His background was very simple, and his relationship with Gloria was also relatively simple. Suede was able to transform from a loss-making fabric store to a high-end clothing store that was sought after by the upper class. The key was actually the sensational new products that were the most important. Gloria's ability was unquestionable, but the soul of Suede was actually the clothing designer, who was the man in the chef's suit in front of him. Mr. Meg is young, promising, and kind. It's admirable. Lance looked at Meg and said with admiration, "Hope School can be built. You put in a lot of effort so that the children can go to school. This is something that will last for a long time." Yes, Mr. Meg is really a good person. Mrs. Deborah also praised. Recently, she had often heard her husband mention Meg. The news of Hope Academy had been very lively in their circle of teachers. Of course, there was another very important reason. Mr. Meg had cured the freckles on Gloria's face. This kindness was worthy of her gratitude, not to mention helping Gloria achieve great success in her career. If it weren't for the fact that Mr. Meg already had a daughter, she would have even thought of matchmaking the two of them. They were a match made in heaven. Has Mr. Meg talked to you about his wife? Is she divorced or widowed? Deborah whispered into Gloria's ear. Gloria was stunned and then blushed. She squeezed her mother's hand under the table and whispered, "Mother, how can I ask about something like that? Why can't you ask? Mr. Meg is such an outstanding person. It's always right to know more about him," Deborah said with a serious expression. Gloria looked at her mother with a strange expression, but didn't say anything. She didn't want to continue this topic. "I heard that Mr. Meg is going to open a chef's academy in Hope School. Looks like our Chaos City is going to become the holy land of chefs on the Norland continent in the future," Lance said with a smile. Mickey, who had been sitting quietly, heard that, and his eyes lit up. He curiously asked, "Chef's Academy? Is it to learn how to cook from him?" "Why? Our Mickey wants to learn how to cook too?" Lance asked with a smile. Mickey nodded and said, Mr. Meg's cooking is so good. If I learn how to cook, I'll be able to cook for everyone. I can even open a restaurant in the future. It should be very interesting. Being a chef is not a good thing. You should aspire to be an outstanding businessman," Jeffrey said with a stern expression. The atmosphere at the dining table immediately became cold. Meg, who just happened to pass by, stopped in his tracks. Did he feel like he was being discriminated against? Who said being a chef was not a good thing? Didn't they see that he was already the #1 chef in the world? Meg resisted the urge to comfort that young man and continued to pass by. It was hard to say whether being a chef was a good thing, but it was very difficult. Normal people couldn't endure this kind of hardship, let alone a young master who grew up in a big family. "Mickey, you're still young, so it's not time to decide your future yet. However, if you're interested in learning how to cook, I can help you ask Hope School. If there are classes on the weekend, I can see if you can attend them." Lance looked at his son with a smile. He didn't pressure his son because of his father's authority. Mickey's face lit up, and he subconsciously glanced at Jeffrey carefully. Jeffrey glanced at Lance, and his lips moved, but he didn't say anything in the end. Gloria's lips curled up slightly as she gave Mickey an encouraging look. Grandpa had changed after all. If it were in the past, he would most likely have slammed the table and lectured his father. But today, he didn't even argue. This was a good change. At least they were more like a family now. When she went out today, she also invited her grandmother, but she declined. She chose to stay at home and have dinner with her second uncle's family. She didn't care about this. Her grandmother had always disliked her family. Now that she was the only heir, they had failed to cause any trouble after returning to Chaos City, so they must hate her to the core. As compared to their family's life a few years ago, Cyril's family wasn't living too shabby now. They just couldn't squander as they liked like before, so she really couldn't feel any pity for them. Gloria ordered a table of dishes and specially ordered Buddha jumps over the wall for Jeffrey. Jeffrey was a little surprised when he saw the price on the menu, but he didn't say anything. This was the first restaurant in Chaos City that dared to set the price of a dish so high. However, judging from the long line at the door, the market agreed with this price and was very popular. This meant that this price was cost-effective, and there was no doubt about it. This also made Jeffrey even more curious about Meg's culinary skills. What kind of dishes did he make that could make so many people crave for them? Soon, the dishes were served one by one. Steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers, red braised pork, spicy chicken, eggplant with garlic sauce, sliced beef and beef lung, mapo tofu, Buddha jumps over the wall, and a bottle of rum. The dishes were all served. The aroma of the meat wafted up along with the steam and went straight to Jeffrey's nostrils. The spiciness of the spicy chicken and steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers were mixed in, and the meaty aroma after the lid of Buddha jumps over the wall was removed made Jeffrey swallow his saliva subconsciously. The table of delicious dishes had already started to show their irresistible charm even before they started eating. Chapter 2286. After swallowing the last piece of braised pork with the last mouthful of rice, Jeffrey put down his chopsticks and burped in satisfaction. Jeffrey was very full for this meal. He had always had a normal appetite, and it had been a long time since he had experienced the feeling of being full. "Father, are you satisfied with the meal?" Lance looked at Jeffrey and smiled. Jeffrey, who had always paid attention to table etiquette, was particularly relaxed at the table today. It was the first time he had seen such a state. "Excellent." Jeffrey nodded, not hiding his satisfaction with the meal. This meal had indeed far exceeded his expectations. He had only agreed to Gloria's invitation because he didn't want to see Cyril's family and Denise's faces at home. He had never heard of any of these delicacies, and the taste made him gasp in amazement. Although he was not a foodie, he had been to many places when he was young. But this was the first time he had seen a chef with such excellent cooking skills. Meg was so famous at such a young age, and his cooking skills were indeed amazing. Jeffrey's impression of Meg skyrocketed. "Then we'll come again next time," Gloria said with a smile. It was not easy to hear a compliment from her grandfather. "Okay." Jeffrey nodded slightly. To be able to eat such delicious food, it seemed that waiting in line for a long time was nothing. Gloria paid the bill, looked in the direction of the kitchen, and left with her family. After the dinner service, Amy ran down from upstairs. Seeing Meg coming out of the kitchen, she asked, "Father, where's Sister Chi-Will? Didn't she come?" "Yes, I didn't see her tonight." Meg nodded. As soon as he said that, the doorbell rang. It must be Sister Chi-Will. Amy ran to the door, happily, and tiptoed to open the door handle. Standing outside was indeed Chi-Will in a tight suit. "Wow, Sister Chi-Will, you're so cool," Amy said. "Thank you." Chi-Will smiled, and then her eyes fell on Meg. "Are we leaving tonight? Are you riding a flying mount?" "Yes, more or less. But the restaurant just closed, so we'll change before we leave. Come in first." Meg nodded at Sivir, who was wearing a set of leather armor and shorts. Her broken boomerang had been replaced with a new one, and there was a conspicuous golden Y engraved on the black boomerang. "Alex?" Meg's eyebrows slightly. Chiwil nodded and walked into the restaurant. All right, everyone, change your clothes first, and then we'll get ready to set off, Meg said to the girls who had finished cleaning up. He also went upstairs to change into a casual short-sleeve shirt, shorts, and flip-flops. Sivers sat off to the side and looked at the girls coming down one after another. All of them had put on pretty little dresses, and the succubus was even wearing a little camisole. She stared at everyone with a peculiar expression from the abyss on her chest. They all looked like they were going to have fun. Only she looked like she was really going to fight sea monsters. I've prepared some clothes for you. Do you want to change? Meg walked over with a paper bag and handed it to Chiwil. It's okay. I've accepted a mission. In order to complete the mission, I need to dress appropriately. As a mercenary, this is a basic requirement. Chiwil raised her hand to refuse, but she could not help but glance at the paper bag in Meg's hand. What kind of clothes would he prepare for her? A little dress? Although the little dress was beautiful, it was far from the weather to wear little dresses. They knew how cold it was as soon as they went out. All right, I'll hold it for you first. Meg nodded and did not force her. After all, she would know how ridiculous her clothes were when she reached the other side. He looked at the girls again. It had been a long time since he saw them in pretty little dresses. They were really pleasing to the eye. Let's go. Meg walked toward the stairs. Everyone followed, and a few children ran upstairs first. Upstairs. Chiwil was a little hesitant. Could the flying mount be parked upstairs? But she still followed at the back. On the balcony of the third floor, Meg opened the door and went out. A small building was seamlessly connected to the balcony. When was this built? Yabamiya asked in surprise. The others also looked at Meg in surprise. They did not see 2 more floors above the restaurant when they came for dinner. This is a mobile restaurant. It's the latest research of Miss Hill and her team, but it hasn't been announced to the public yet. I borrowed it from her for 2 days. This time, we'll fly to the Demon Islands on it. Meg opened the door and gestured for everyone to go in. A mobile restaurant? Can it fly? Chiwil looked at the exquisite 2-story building in surprise. He could not help but think to himself. Although everyone was curious, they still followed Meg into the mobile restaurant. They knew that Miss Hill was the head of the Buffett family and a super rich woman. Compared to Mamie's, this restaurant was small and exquisite. Or rather, it was more like a residence. There was only one big dining table on the first floor, which could accommodate 20 people at the same time. Next to it was a lounge area with a thick carpet. The fire in the fireplace was burning brightly, and the room was very warm. There were all kinds of board games on the shelves, and there was a projection screen on the wall. Meg had set this up in advance. Anyway, he did not plan to open a restaurant on this trip, so he had asked the system to customize a lounge area. The carpet was very big and could easily fit 20 to 30 people. They could roll around however they liked. If they were tired from playing at night, they could just lie on the carpet and sleep. After all, there were not that many rooms prepared. Sivers stood at the entrance, and she looked around at the cozy and exquisite hall. She suddenly felt like she was wearing a little too much. The leather armor looked thin and light, but it was actually made from the finest rhinoceros hide. Not only was it resistant to the cold, it also emitted heat. Even during the coldest winter in the mountain range of magical beasts, one wouldn't feel cold. But now was not the time. The temperature in this room was too high. She had only just entered the door, but she could already feel her chest and back heating up. Sweat seeped out of her nose, and the leather boots on her feet were also starting to release heat. Meg closed the door and let the restaurant fly away. He looked at Chiwil, who was standing there motionless, and the corners of his mouth curled up. He walked up and said with a smile, "Take a seat over there. I will prepare the barbecue. Have fun." Okay. Chiwil nodded. She suddenly wanted him to give her the clothes that he had rejected just now. Maybe she could really wear them. It's rare for us to come out. Everyone, do as you please and have fun, Meg said to everyone. And then he put on an apron and went into the kitchen. Then let's perform. Amy walked out and said to everyone, "I'll go first. I will perform a new trick that I recently learned, breaking rocks on my chest." Chapter 2287. Everyone smiled when they saw Amy pull out a rock the size of a millstone. Amy scanned the crowd and chose Chi-Will. She said, "Sister Chi-Will, you're the lucky audience member. Now, I invite you to perform with me." Huh? Chi-Will looked confused. "What you need to do is very simple. You just need to use this hammer to smash the rock on me." Amy pulled out a sledgehammer and handed it to Chi-Will. Chi-Will held the sledgehammer that weighed almost 50 kilograms and was stunned for a while before she came back to her senses. Amy was so small. How could she carry the sledgehammer with one hand and hand it to her? She looked even more relaxed than she did. Meanwhile, Amy was already lying down on the carpet with the heavy rock on her chest. "Little Amy, are you confident?" Yabamiya asked worriedly as she knelt beside Amy. The rock was at least 200 to 300 kilograms. The little girl was lying on top of her and even wanted Chi-Will to smash it with the sledgehammer. "I don't think it's appropriate." Chi-Will put down the sledgehammer in her hand. She couldn't bring herself to smash a little girl with such a big sledgehammer. Just looking at the rock on top of her made her feel like she could be flattened at any time. How could she bear to do it? "Yeah, let's perform something else like singing or dancing." Phyllis nodded and looked at Amy worriedly. "It's okay. I'm really good at it." Amy looked around and saw that no one was willing to come up and smash her, so she had no choice but to sit up with the rock on her own. "All right, since no one wants to smash me, I'll just have to smash myself." As she spoke, she clenched her right hand into a small fist and punched the rock on her chest. Her small fist was delicate and cute. It didn't look lethal, but when such a cute little fist hit the heavy rock, it made a dull thud as if a heavy hammer had fallen to the ground. Crack! A series of cracking sounds could be heard. With the fist as the center, fine cracks spread out like a spider's web. The huge rock instantly shattered into countless pieces and fell to the ground. Not a single piece was larger than a fist. The restaurant was silent for a while. Everyone looked at Amy in shock. Chi-Will's mouth was wide open in shock. She knew that Amy knew magic. She had shown her talent in magic when they went on a mission together last time. But how could she smash the rock on her chest? She even hugged the rock herself and performed the act of crushing the rock with her chest. It wasn't a prop. It was a real rock, the granite commonly seen in Chaos City. It was very hard. "Amy, you're so awesome." Daphne looked at Amy's eyes were full of stars. Ignatsu, on the other hand, moved a little further away from Amy. At the same time, he began to seriously consider his attitude towards Amy from now on. Close combat magic is so scary. I want to learn it too. Barbara was a little envious. She wondered if Amy could recommend her to be Crassus' disciple and learn close combat magic. A magic caster's weakest point was their close combat ability. As a spatial magic caster, she had a stronger ability to protect herself than normal magic casters, but that was only for self-protection. Who wouldn't want to experience the passion of close combat? If she could, she wanted to try it too. While everyone was amazed, they didn't forget to clap for Amy to show their approval. "Thank you." Amy stood up and bowed slightly before returning to her seat with satisfaction. Elizabeth waved her hand and swept away the broken rocks on the carpet. "Then let's each prepare a performance. We'll take turns. Gina will go on stage and sing a song to warm up the atmosphere." Angela stood up and took the initiative to be the MC and atmosphere team. Gina stood up graciously and stood in the middle of the carpet. She announced a song that no one could understand before she started singing. Her beautiful and ethereal voice was like the deep groans of the deep sea. Everyone was mesmerized. Chi-Will sat in a corner far away from the fireplace. She felt hot all over, and her forehead was covered in sweat. "Have an ice cream." Yabamiya sat down beside her and handed her a freshly made ice cream. "Thank you." Chi-Will scooped a spoonful of the matcha-flavored ice cream and put it into her mouth. The cold feeling instantly penetrated her heart, and the hot feeling dissipated instantly. The sweet and fresh taste spread in her mouth. It was so comfortable that she wanted to moan. After eating a few mouthfuls of ice cream, she felt that her soul had returned. She quickly relaxed as she listened to the pleasant song. "Why don't I take you to change your clothes? We can wear the armor when we go out to sea. Let's have fun tonight," Mia said with a smile as she watched her finish the ice cream. Chi-Will looked at the warm smile on Mia's face and hesitated. But after she finished the ice cream, the heat wave hit her again. She couldn't take off her clothes. After all, this was a formal party. But she did feel that it was too hot. Let's go upstairs and change. Mia grabbed Siver's hand and stood up. She picked up the paper bag on the cabinet and said to Mag, who was in the kitchen, "Boss, I'll take the clothes. I'll take young Mistress Siver upstairs to change." "Okay," Meg replied from the kitchen. "Go in and change. You can also take a simple shower. Turn on the switch and the water will come out. I'll wait for you outside." Mia turned on the bathroom light and taught her how to use the shower. Then, she handed the paper bag to Chi-Will. "Thank you," Chi-Will said gratefully to Mia and took the paper bag into the bathroom. She opened the paper bag. There was a light yellow dress inside. It was light and soft and very comfortable to the touch. Other than that, there were 2 sets of underwear. Chi-Will blushed. She didn't expect that he would even prepare underwear for her, but he definitely didn't know the size. If it didn't fit, it would be uncomfortable. Then, she saw that there were 2 sets of leopard print underwear at the bottom of the paper bag. The sexy design and patterns made Chi-Will blush instantly. That's way too despicable. Siver felt humiliated. But why did the leopard print swimsuit on the chair look so sexy and seductive? If she wore it, it would look good on her, right? Chi-Will turned on the cold water and took a cold shower to calm herself down. She stood in front of the swimsuit in a daze for a while. She didn't know why she put it on. Looking at her sexy and wild self in the mirror, Chi-Will was a little entranced. So beautiful. Her slim waist made her full breasts and perky buttocks look even sexier. The bright leopard print complemented her wheat-colored skin. Her red hair, casually draped over her shoulders, made her look even more charming. But why is it so suitable? Chi-Will's expression froze instantly. Chapter 2288. Chi-Will changed into a pale yellow dress and came out of the bathroom with a red face. Unsurprisingly, the underwear she wore fitted her perfectly. She felt like she was being watched from the outside to the inside. But she had to admit that the dress was very comfortable. It was light and soft, but not too translucent. When she saw herself in the dress in the mirror, she realized for the first time that she could look so good in a dress. Chi-Will, this dress is so beautiful. It fits you perfectly. Mia's eyes lit up when she saw Chi-Will coming out of the bathroom. "Thank you." Chi-Will nodded slightly and blushed even more. He was a man that she had barely met, but he was able to prepare clothes that fit her perfectly. It was hard to explain. "Then let's go downstairs. The show is still waiting for us." Mia held Chi-Will's hand and went downstairs. When they passed by the kitchen, Chi-Will glanced at Meg with mixed feelings. She didn't know whether to praise him for having sharp eyes or for being a pervert. It fits you quite well." Meg also noticed her. He walked to the kitchen door and nodded at her with satisfaction. Siver changed out of her leather armor and shorts and put on a long dress. She let down her long hair, revealing a head of wavy red hair, a hot figure, and healthy wheat-colored skin. She looked like a supermodel. He wondered how she would look when she put on that leopard print swimsuit. "Wow, Sister Chi-Will looks so pretty in a dress," Amy exclaimed. Everyone looked over one after another, revealing expressions of admiration. Chi-Will was a little uncomfortable with the attention, but she was also a little happy. She had never worn a dress in front of anyone since she became a mercenary 10 years ago and took over the Rose mercenary group. Most people would be attracted by her hot body, but they would restrain themselves when they saw the boomerang on her back. However, very few people would look at her with such an admiring gaze, just like how sometimes she couldn't help but look at the beautiful girls who walked past her. Gina has already sung 3 songs. Now, it's time for Chi-Will, who has changed into a beautiful dress, to give a new performance, Angela said as she looked at Chi-Will. "Me?" Chi-Will was stunned for a moment before he waved his hand and said, I can't sing or dance." As a mercenary, she had only learned skills to protect her life and become stronger. Among them, she had not learned any entertainment skills, such as singing and dancing. Angela shook her head with a smile and said, "It's okay if you don't know how to sing or dance. You could just perform something you're good at. Didn't Amy just perform breaking a rock on her chest? Chiwil lowered his head and looked at his chest. He didn't think that would work. However, her gaze quickly fell on the chopstick holder on the side table. Her eyes lit up as she said, I know what I can perform for everyone. She walked to the table and took out a chopstick. She spun it on her fingertips and drew a round arc. Then, she threw it out casually. The silver chopstick turned into a silver light and spun twice in the spacious hall before landing in Chiwil's hand again. So cool. The four children's eyes widened, and they started clapping one after another. The girls also applauded and encouraged her. It wasn't difficult to do this. Almost everyone present could do it, especially Barbara. As a spatial magic caster, she could control objects very well. However, Chiwil was a little different. She used pure skills. She used the strength of her wrist and fingertips to make an ordinary chopstick fly back to her hand accurately after completing a complicated flight. This required many years of practice to be able to lift heavy weights as easily as if they were nothing. Chiwil didn't expect such a great response from everyone. She performed a few other small tricks, such as using the chopstick to hit the small wooden sign at the door and making it bounce back to her hand. Everyone was happy to watch the show. In particular, the children pestered Chiwil, saying that they wanted to learn this. However, just how to make the chopsticks spin on their fingertips was enough to make them stumped. On the other hand, Annie sat quietly at the side, twirling a chopstick between her fingers. This was a skill that many straight-A students could learn on their own. After this interaction, Chiwil's state was completely relaxed. She sat in the crowd and watched others perform. Occasionally, she would chat and interact with others. The smile on her face gradually increased. Although the atmosphere in the Rose mercenary group had always been good, they lived a life of bloodshed after all. Usually, when they went out for missions, their nerves were tense. When they weren't doing missions, they mostly stayed by themselves. Occasionally, they would eat and drink and talk about the mercenary circle. At this moment, Chiwil suddenly realized that she didn't have any female friends. Most of the time, she didn't even think of herself as a woman. However, she really liked this kind of atmosphere where they sang and danced, where they joked with each other, and where they played with each other. She felt her soul relax. Everyone was in a warm room, sitting on a soft and comfortable carpet, wearing loose and comfortable dresses, and surrounded by beautiful young ladies. It was so comfortable. The barbecue is here. Let's eat and play at the same time. Meg brought out 2 plates of barbecued meat and placed them in front of everyone. I'll go get the beer. Mia got up and came back with a pile of beer. She distributed it to everyone. Barbecued meat with beer. Wonderful. Mag also sat down in the middle of the ladies. He raised his beer glass and smilingly said, Come, let's have a toast to celebrate. I hope everyone can have a good time on this trip. Cheers. Everyone raised their glasses. Then there was the sound of gulping down beer. That night, everyone had a good time with barbecued meat, beer, lobsters, oysters, singing and dancing. In the middle of the night, Meg put down his glass and looked at the drunk girls on the floor. He sneezed and frowned. He got up and cleaned up the mess. Then, he arranged the girls one by one, covered them with blankets, and let them sleep on the floor. Then, he carried his 2 daughters upstairs and put them on the bed. Then, he went to take a shower and returned to his room to sleep. Wow, it's the sea. We're really at the beach. It's so beautiful. It's like a sapphire. I can't see the end of it. The next morning, Meg was woken up by surprised voices. Meg stretched and opened the curtains. He looked at the blue sky and sea in the distance, and the naughty children who were rolling on the beach in front of the door. End of chapter. Chapter 2289. The flying restaurant landed on an uninhabited island. It was not a desolate place, but the island was very small, and it was in the deep sea. The resources were limited, and even the small demons were not interested in it. Hence, it became an uninhabited island. However, although it was small, the scenery on the island was not bad. There was a golden beach around the island. The sand was smooth and fine, and there was almost no debris. The quality was very high. There was also a small forest on the island. There was a small lake in the middle of the forest. It was a freshwater lake. Coconut trees could be seen everywhere. There were also a few tropical fruits in the forest. Meg could not name them, but he had seen people eat them on the Demon Islands. Because it was in the deep sea, there were almost no mammals on the island. However, it was also a paradise for seabirds. The cries of a few children caused a flock of seabirds in the forest behind the house to fly away in fright. It was quite a spectacular sight. So this is the sea. It's so spectacular. Chiwil stood in front of the house and looked at the boundless sea in front of her. The waves crashed onto the beach, and the blue sky merged with the sea in the distance. It made her feel very shocked. She used to think that the mountain range of magic beasts was huge, but now, compared to the sea, she realized that the mountain range of magic beasts was just a small mountain range. It was not surprising at all. Other than that, she also felt the heat wave hitting her. Yes, the scorching sun shone on her body. She felt as though she was in Chaos City in August. Luckily, she was still wearing that pale yellow dress. She was still considering if she should change into her leather armor before she went out. After all, the Demon Island was the most chaotic and dangerous place on the Northern continent. Now, it seemed like she could put that thought aside. If she changed into her leather armor, the first thing she had to consider was whether she would faint from the heat. She turned back and saw Meg standing by the window on the second floor. Meg noticed her gaze too. He was wearing loose pajamas and inadvertently revealed his perfect figure with a muscular chest and 8-pack abs. He smiled at Chiwil. Chiwil blushed and quickly turned back. She felt her heart beating faster. To a mercenary, the image of a man's bare chest was nothing. But why was his figure so good? Muscular chest, defined 8-pack abs, and perfect curves all the way down. He was just a chef. The weather is really good. If we don't swim a few laps in the sea, it would be a waste of God's good intentions. Meg changed his clothes and went downstairs to make breakfast for everyone. After breakfast, Meg looked at the crowd and said, "The beach chairs are in the storage room at the back. If you want to go sunbathing, you can take them. If you want to swim, you can go upstairs and change." I want to go swimming. Swimming in the sea is the most fun. I also want to catch sea monsters in the sea. Amy was the first to jump off the chair and run upstairs. I'm going to soak in the sea too. It's been a long time since I've seen such good weather. Mia followed him upstairs. They had been to the Demon Islands for a vacation before, so they knew the basics. Moreover, everyone had prepared bikinis before they came. Naturally, they wouldn't hesitate and went upstairs one after another. Meg looked at the motionless Chiwil and said with a smile, "Aren't you going to exchange?" Chiwil bit his lower lip and blushed. He shook his head and said, "I don't want to exchange." That leopard print swimsuit was simply too embarrassing. Although she admitted that it looked good, she still couldn't accept the thought of wearing it in front of Mag. "It's been a long time since I felt free. Boss, I'll go to the sea and wait for you guys." Gina was the first to come downstairs. She was wearing her own seashell swimsuit. The two colorful seashells couldn't hide the surging waves at all. They had the original wildness and beauty. Together with her innocent face, she looked pure and lustful. "Go ahead." Meg nodded with a smile. The sea was Gina's home. She couldn't wait to go. "Chiwil, you should change into your swimsuit too. If you don't know how to swim, I'll teach you later," Gina said to Chiwil with a smile. Then, she walked towards the sea. Chiwil's eyes widened a little as he watched Gina walk to the beach with her beautiful back exposed. Then, she jumped into the sea and stirred up some waves. Gina's swimsuit was natural and beautiful, but it seemed to reveal more than her swimsuit. However, she looked so confident and showed off her beautiful figure without any concealment. Meg's expression was also gentle and natural. He didn't show a perverted expression just because Gina wore less. If anything, it was just restrained admiration. Then, all the ladies came downstairs one after another. They had all changed into beautiful swimsuits of different colors and styles. Elizabeth was wearing an ice crystal blue one-piece swimsuit. It accentuated her perfect figure and made her look noble and pure. No one would think that she was blasphemous. Yabamiya was wearing two sunflowers. They looked bright and energetic. Barbara was wearing a pink swimsuit. Although it looked ordinary, it was still cute. Phyllis's swimsuit was a little more conservative. It was a cute floral dress. She was still tugging at the hem of her dress when she came downstairs. Her face was slightly red. Chi-Will couldn't stand it when all the beauties were fighting for attention. Meanwhile, everyone was looking at her strangely. She was the only one who hadn't changed into a swimsuit. Sister Chi-Will, where's your swimsuit? Amy was wearing a cute purple swimsuit. She looked up at Chi-Will and said, "Didn't we agree to catch sea monsters together?" Chi-Will was a little embarrassed by everyone's stares. However, he still said stubbornly, "I'll just wear it like this. We'll catch sea monsters. The material of your clothes will become transparent once it enters the water. Don't blame me for not reminding you," Meg said with a smile as he leaned against the door frame. "WH what?" Chi-Will's expression changed slightly. "Also, this is a dress. Do you think you can control it to maintain its current state once it enters the water? This isn't some high-end anti-gravity dress," Meg continued. Chi-Will was already imagining the scene of her dress flying up after she jumped into the water. It was too embarrassing. She felt like she had been tricked by Meg from the moment she put on this dress. No, it was from the moment she stepped into this house. "Sister Chi-Will, hurry up and change into your swimsuit. I'll wait for you." "We agreed to meet," Amy said with a serious expression. Chi-Will looked at Amy. He didn't want to break his promise to her. Then, he looked at the girls who had changed into their swimsuits. From the looks of it, her swimsuit didn't seem like much. At least it suited her. "Okay, I'll go change." Chi-Will quickly went upstairs. Chapter 2290. Chi-Will changed into her swimsuit and came downstairs. Everyone's eyes lit up when they saw her in a leopard print swimsuit. She had wheat-colored skin and a curvy figure. She looked like a sexy leopard in the eye-catching leopard print swimsuit, exuding an irresistible charm, especially that eye-catching abyss. Meg raised his eyebrows slightly. He had good taste. It really suited her. "This swimsuit is so sexy, and it suits you so well," Mia complimented. "Why are they all so big?" Barbara pulled her collar open and took a look. She felt as if she had received a heavy blow. "Sister Barbara, don't be discouraged. Next time, you can also break a rock on your chest," Amy encouraged her. "Thank you." Barbara clutched her chest. This suggestion was not very offensive, but it was very damaging. "I'm going surfing. Help yourselves. Kids who don't know how to swim can play in the sand by the beach," Meg said as he carried a surfboard and went out. In his previous life, Meg had drowned after falling into the sea. Therefore, in order to improve himself, he had been doing swimming training recently. From conquering the bathtub, to conquering Gina's water tank, to conquering the fountain in Aiden Square, and then to the man-made lake. Step by step, it was finally time to conquer the sea. Standing on the cliff by the sea, Meg looked at the turbulent sea. The waves crashed against the shore, making loud noises. As he stared at the sea, the deeper he went, the deeper it became. It was as if there were spirits hiding in it, making him feel suffocated and fearful. Meg closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and jumped down. He was just like a beautiful silver fish. Oh no. It was a hard salted fish that slapped horizontally onto the water surface. Huh! There was an explosion, and the water splashed up 3 meters high. If the Filipino diving team saw this, they would be ecstatic. Meg did not faint, just a little dizzy. Of course, this dizziness only lasted for a moment. The salty seawater instantly woke him up. In that instant, the shadow of death once again enveloped him. It was as if a pair of invisible hands had grabbed him and dragged him to the bottom of the ocean. He was powerless to break free and could only allow himself to be dragged into the darkness. Just like in his previous life, he was powerless to resist. "No, I'm no longer Meg Shun. I'm Meg Alex, a man close to God." A voice shouted in his heart. He instantly opened his eyes, and the darkness suddenly retreated. A waterless space with a radius of 3 meters appeared around his body. Mag floated quietly in the sea, just like that. His surroundings were completely silent. He could see that at the bottom of the sea, dozens of meters below, the small fishes and shrimps in the corals were shivering. In the distance, there were also fishes that were fleeing quickly, as if they were frightened by something. Meg stretched out his hand and slowly extended it out of the waterless space. The seawater wrapped around his palm, and space instantly collapsed as the seawater drowned him. However, he did not feel fear or suffocation this time. He still floated quietly in the water, and his expression was calm with a tinge of surprise. Meg was indeed very surprised. He seemed to have obtained the ability to breathe underwater. He did not need to hold his breath or any other breathing equipment. He could directly absorb oxygen from the water. System, what's the principle behind this? Meg asked curiously in his heart. It's just a normal operation of a fake god. There's nothing to explain, the system said calmly. Meg was speechless. Then why didn't I have this ability when I fell into the water earlier? I almost died again. Meg was puzzled. Every ability needs to be activated. What almost killed you earlier was a psychological shadow, the system replied. Meg was too lazy to argue with it. However, in that instant, other than obtaining the ability to survive underwater, he had also completely gotten rid of the fear of the deep sea. He swam towards the bottom of the sea. He had just seen a huge shrimp. The ladies ran to the beach and jumped into the sea. They swam happily like fish. With Gina, a mermaid who had grown up in the water, the ladies in the restaurant had already learned how to swim. Amy swam 2 laps in the water. She looked at Chi-Will, who was still treading water by the beach, and shouted, "Sister Chi-Will, let's go play in the sea. I think I saw a sea monster just now." Chi-Will looked at the blue and unfathomable sea. She looked troubled. She was a little envious of the ladies who could swim happily in the sea like fish. She did not know how to swim. She was a child who grew up in the mountains. She was good at climbing trees, but it was difficult for her to catch fish in the sea. Chi-Will, come here. I'll teach you how to swim. Gina swam out of the water. She flicked her hair and smiled warmly. Then, she reached out her hand to Chi-Will. Chi-Will looked at Gina's hand, then looked at Amy's expectant gaze. She hesitated for a while, but still reached out her hand. Gina grabbed her hand and pulled gently. Chi-Will fell forward into the sea. 1 step away was the abyss. Chi-Will felt as if her feet were stepping on soft cotton. No matter how hard she kicked, her body was still sinking. The water had already submerged her waist, shoulders, neck, and mouth. The salty taste of the sea was so clear, just like her heartbeat that suddenly sped up. Her hands stretched forward stiffly, as if she had forgotten how to struggle. Then, she fell into a soft embrace. The air returned, and a gentle voice sounded in her ears. "Don't be afraid. I'm here. Now relax your body. Imagine that you're like a ball of water. Slowly merge with the sea." Chi-Will felt her heart slowly calm down. Then, she unconsciously followed the voice to position and manipulate her body. The cool seawater gradually became gentle, and she felt an upward force. She only needed to control her body and coordinate with that force. Then, she would be able to float on the surface of the water and move forward with her hands and feet. "Now, open your eyes. You've learned how to swim," Gina said. Chi-Will opened her eyes. Her hands pushed the water outwards gently. She floated on the surface of the water with a smile on her face. She had really learned how to swim. It was unbelievable. "Thank you, Gina," Chi-Will said gratefully as she looked at Gina. "You're welcome." Gina smiled warmly. "Have fun. The sea is actually the most gentle existence." "Sister Chi-Will, since you've learned how to swim, I'll teach you how to dive. Look just like me. Take a deep breath and swim downstream." Amy took a deep breath and dived into the water. Chi-Will hesitated for a while. Then, she took a deep breath and swam into the sea with Amy. Chapter 2291. Kids, come over here. Big sister will teach you how to swim. Gina's gaze was fixed on the children who were building sand castles on the shore. "Big sister, we don't want to." The 3 children quickly waved their hands, especially Ignatsu. His head shook like a rattle drum, and his face turned pale. Swimming is very fun, and it's a necessary survival skill. If you accidentally fall into the water in the future, you won't have to worry about drowning if you know how to swim. Gina walked up to the shore step by step. I don't want to swim. I'm scared of water. Ignacio threw away the little shovel in his hand and turned to run. However, he was lifted up by his collar before he could run a few steps. Ignacio, let's start with you. Look at how chubby and round you are. There's a swimming ring around your waist, and you'll float if you're thrown into the water. You'll definitely learn how to swim very quickly. Gina jumped into the sea with Ignacio in her hand. Help! Ignacio let out a scream and a series of gurgling sounds. Go, Ignacio! Daphne encouraged him with clenched fists and then instinctively hid half a step behind Jessica. Although she also wanted to swim around in the sea like Amy and be a free fish, the sea was too scary. But the sea was too scary. If he fell into the sea, would he sink? Were there scary sea monsters in the sea that would eat people? Just the thought of these made her feel that the deep blue sea was like a sea monster with its mouth wide open. Jessica looked at Ignacio, who was flopping in the sea with sparkling eyes. The expression on her little face changed from fear to interest and then to eagerness in the end. Ignacio flopped in the sea for a while, and after drinking a few mouthfuls of seawater, he suddenly realized that he really couldn't sink. The fat on his stomach was like a swimming ring, and it reached an ingenious balance around his waist, allowing him to float on the surface of the water just like that. Hey, I really learned how to swim. Ignacio exclaimed in surprise. No, you're only floating on the surface of the water with your body talent now. You have to make yourself move. That's called swimming. Gina shook her head with a smile and pushed him forward gently. Ignacio fell forward and waved his hands subconsciously. Just like that, his round body that was floating on the surface of the water swam out. Now you have really learned it. Gina nodded in satisfaction. She turned to look at Jessica and Daphne. Before Gina could speak, Jessica had already raised her small hand and said, Sister Gina, I also want to learn how to swim. A smile appeared on Gina's face. She waved her hand and said, Good girl, Jessica, come over here. Sister will teach you how to swim. Half an hour later, Meg came ashore with a long kelp in his hand. There were all kinds of fresh seafood strung on the kelp. There were more than a dozen crabs that weighed a catty each. Lobsters were bundled up like firewood. Yellow croakers were tied up in a row. There was also a net of large scallops. There's so much seafood. Are we having a seafood feast today? Amy and Chi-Will, who could not find the sea monster, had already come ashore. The little girl was the first to run over and asked in surprise. After swimming for a bit, the ladies who were sunbathing by the shore also looked over with expectant expressions. The freshly caught seafood was very fresh. Coupled with Meg's culinary skills, they were already drooling just by looking at the ingredients. Yes, I'll be making a seafood feast for everyone this afternoon. It's all freshly caught seafood. Since we're at the beach, we naturally have to try it. Meg nodded with a smile. He simply caught some seafood and made a normal seafood feast. There were braised green crabs, spicy and garlic lobsters, steamed yellow croakers, a large plate of steamed scallops with garlic and vermicelli, a large plate of grilled oysters, and an ordinary pot of sea cucumber and prawn porridge. It was paired with all kinds of fruits that the ladies had just picked. Time to eat. Meg moved the dining table to the beach. Everyone sat around the long table, basking in the warm sunlight and enjoying the sea breeze as they enjoyed this locally sourced seafood feast. Chi-Will looked at the table full of dishes, and her throat moved. She felt a little strange. She felt as if she was not here to work for a mercenary mission. Instead, she was here to have fun with everyone. Not only did she have fun, but she also learned how to swim and could eat delicious food every meal. Meg looked at Chi-Will, who was still wearing her leopard print swimsuit, and said with a smile, Eat, don't stand on ceremony. Treat this as your own home. Home? Chi-Will glanced at him. Is he hinting at something? But we don't seem to know each other very well. Although we can slowly get to know each other in the future, isn't it a little too soon? Here, have a scallop. Meg picked up a scallop with garlic and vermicelli for her. Thank you. Chi-Will nodded with a blush on her face as she looked at the scallop on the plate. The scallop shell became a natural container. The thick scallop meat was piled with pure white vermicelli and fried golden minced garlic. There were also a few small red chili peppers. The colorful and beautiful scallop was clearly placed with great care. The freshness was already assailing her nose. After swimming in the sea for a long time, the porridge she had in the morning had already been consumed. Now, her appetite was aroused by the aroma, and her stomach could not help but growl. She picked up the scallop and then put everything on the scallop in her mouth. First, the thick garlic aroma aroused her taste buds. Then, the sweetness of the seafood and the perfect freshness exploded in her mouth. Finally, there was the satisfaction of chewing vermicelli. Every bite was different, and the layered feeling was distinct. All of her taste buds were fully activated, and she could not stop. That carefree feeling came from inside to outside, from bottom to top, as if her soul was rising. She gently bit her lips, but could not help but let out a soft moan. Delicious. Meg looked at her slightly trembling body with appreciation. It was a beautiful arc. Eat more if you like it. Meg picked up a few more scallops for her. She will bit her lips, and her face was a little hot. She looked at Meg with a slightly resentful gaze, but when she looked at the scallops on the plate in front of her, her hands did not listen to her, and picked up one. It was too delicious. This was an irresistible taste. Even if her brain told her not to continue, her body did not listen to her and fell into the abyss. It was Meg's first time making steamed scallops with garlic and vermicelli, but it received unanimous praise from everyone. The grilled oysters were also popular. After a while, a large plate was finished. The braised green crab was a little difficult to eat, but the delicious and plump crab meat brought a sense of satisfaction that the small crabs could not compare to. It was also popular with everyone. Chapter 2292. The freshly caught large yellow croaker only needed to be steamed in the most primitive way to enjoy the perfect gift of nature. The tender fish meat was extremely fresh and sweet. Meg took a few bites and nodded in satisfaction. The freshest ingredients were naturally at the source. For a delicacy like the large yellow croaker, he was lucky enough to encounter a school of fish today. Of course, the freshest ingredients were not only at the source, but also in his refrigerator. A refrigerator that went directly to the source had no middlemen, so the freshness was guaranteed. Ding! Since the host's seafood meal has achieved 100% satisfaction, the host will receive the recipes for steamed large yellow croaker, steamed scallops with garlic and vermicelli, and grilled oysters. Please pass the test field for the god of cookery within 3 days. Otherwise, the recipes will be taken back. At this moment, the system's voice suddenly sounded in Meg's mind. Oh! Meg's eyes lit up. He didn't expect this feast to successfully trigger the system's reward. However, after thinking about it for a while, he understood that the system was encouraging him to try cooking different dishes and become a real chef. What about the braised green crab? Isn't it quite good? Meg said. That's it. The system was disdainful. Meg looked at the braised green crab that was about to turn into a CD. The control of the fire was indeed a little lacking, but the cooking method and seasoning were improved from the braised lobster. Although it wasn't bad, it was still far from perfect. All right, that's it. Meg wasn't greedy. The system was already very generous to receive 3 recipes in one go. After lunch, everyone looked up after a while. Meg said, "Why don't we stay at Camilla's castle tonight?" "Sure. I like big castles." Amy was the first to jump up and say with a nod. The children's faces were also full of anticipation. There were many fairy tales about castles. Usually, those who lived in castles were either princesses or princes. But this is a vampire's castle. It's a little different from the fairy tales you've heard before, Meg said with a smile. I heard that vampires love to suck the blood of children, Yabamiya added. It's too scary. I don't want to go to the vampire castle anymore. I want to go home. I miss Mama. Ignatsu was so scared that his bean sprouts withered. He covered his face and shivered. A hint of fear also appeared on Daphne's face as she leaned closer to Amy, trying to find some sense of security. On the other hand, Jessica's expression was firm, and there was even a hint of curiosity in her eyes. Amy's eyes lit up. She clenched her little fists and said, "That'll definitely be more fun. I want to go." If I meet a vampire that sucks the blood of little kids, I'll beat him up. Then let's go to Camilla's house as guests. Meg smiled and changed the flying restaurant into a big boat. He called the girls to the bed. After the war, Camilla, as the chief of the vampires, returned to the Demon Islands and did not come to work in the restaurant. As a boss, Meg was not very happy with employees who skipped work for no reason after getting promoted and making a fortune. This time, other than bringing everyone over as guests, he also wanted to ask Camilla if she still wanted to work this time. If she didn't, he would have to hire new people. Phyllis was too busy preparing the ingredients by herself, so he had to share a large portion of the work every time. Sitting at the back of the boat, Meg held a fishing rod in his hand and closed his eyes to take a nap as the sea breeze blew. When it came to fishing, it was up to fate. After all, he was already full. The vampire's territory was not far from here. The boat sailed for about half an hour, and an isolated island shrouded in fog appeared in front of everyone's eyes. It was an isolated island made of black rocks. It was faintly discernible in the fog, and it looked mysterious with a hint of eeriness. This island looks eerie. It's so scary. Ignatsu covered his eyes and hid behind the crowd, shivering. Daphne, don't be afraid. I'm here, Amy said seriously as she grabbed Daphne's little hand. Daphne looked at Amy and had an inexplicable confidence in her. It was as long as Amy was around, nothing would be scary. We came in a hurry, and I didn't inform her. I don't know if she's at home. Meg put away the fishing rod, threw a big crab hanging on it back into the sea, and walked to the bow of the boat. Chief, Camilla and Dracula have gone out. Let's go and see the Lord Ancestor. You are the most respected person in the family. What's wrong with letting a little girl like Camilla be the chief? Everyone is unhappy. A vampire looked at Maynard, who was stroking the ring in his hand with a gloomy expression, and said with indignation. A few other vampires chimed in, expressing their loyalty one after another. Maynard was silent for a while, and said, Dracula is no longer the Dracula of the past. According to the rules, he has the right to promote Camilla to be the chief. The Lord Ancestor has also tacitly agreed to this. Furthermore, Camilla is my daughter. But Chief, you've worked so hard to lead the vampires for so many years, yet you let that lunatic Dracula and that crazy woman Camilla mess around like this. What will happen to the vampires in the future? We don't even know what to do. Yes, Chief, we know that Camilla is your daughter, but she's not on your side. All the vampires started to voice their opinions. Maynard slowly clenched his fists. He thought of the humiliating scene when Dracula stripped him of his position as the chief. The position of the Lord Ancestor should have belonged to him. He had the power to truly become an immortal existence, but Dracula took it away halfway. Now, Dracula didn't even give him any face. He stripped him of his position as the chief and even made Camilla the new chief. Now, there were jokes about him all over the Demon Islands. Everyone said that he was old and useless. Even his own daughter was riding on him. Report. There's a ship approaching our territory. Right at this moment, a vampire reported from outside the door. A ship. Maynard frowned. All the vampires were surprised too. See who it is, Maynard ordered. Yes. The vampire outside the door replied. The ship broke through the fog and soon arrived at a relatively flat cliff. Vampires could fly, so there was no harbor on this island that could dock a large ship. It was close to the coast, and there were countless hidden reefs at the bottom of the sea. Meg anchored the ship and stood at the bow. He looked at the two black dots in the sky that were flying closer and closer. Two Batmen. Oh, it should be two vampires. The two vampires hovered above the cliff. One of the vampires with sharp teeth looked at Meg and asked sternly, Who are you? Why are you trespassing on our vampire territory? Chapter 2293. Mag glanced at that vampire and smiled humbly and gently. We are Camilla's friends. We are here as guests. A friend of clan leader Camilla? The vampire and the other vampire looked at each other and smiled. Are you worthy of being a friend of our chief? I think you're crazy. How dare you trespass into the territory of the vampires? Let me taste the blood and flesh of a reckless fellow like you. Let's see if you really have the guts to do so. The skinny vampire sneered. He flapped his wings and swooped down at Meg with a cruel smile on his face. He saw that there were many women and children on the ship and thought that they would taste good. They could kill invading enemies in any way they wanted, including sucking their blood dry. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of Meg. His fangs had become sharp and slender, and his hands had become sharp claws. He opened his hands as if he wanted to grab Meg's neck and suck his blood dry. He had not tasted human blood for many years. After all, very few humans were bold enough to drive a ship here. Ignatsu and Daphne screamed and covered their eyes at the same time. Chiwil held the boomerang nervously. This was a very powerful vampire. She was not sure if she could subdue him, but she had to stop him. Bang! The next moment, a crisp sound was heard. The vampire's face was filled with fear, and then his expression was dispelled by a foldable chair. He was as dashing as he came, and as flustered as he was when he was sent flying. Bang, bang, bang. Boom! The vampire crashed through a row of trees and finally crashed into an ancient castle, causing half of it to collapse. The scene was silent. The remaining vampire looked at the little girl standing beside the man holding a foldable chair, and then looked at his companion buried in the castle. He was stunned for a while and still could not understand. She looked so small and cute. She looked like a little fairy. How could she have such terrifying power? How could she send a fifth-tier vampire flying in such a violent manner? Amy's girls were also in high spirits. They knew that Amy had amazing magic talent and was the champion of the Magic Caster Tournament. But seeing her send a vampire flying with a chair, this scene was even more shocking than hearing about it. As so powerful, Jessica looked at Amy in amazement. She did not expect her little friend to be so powerful now. Daphne and Ignatsu did not hear the terrifying screams that they expected. They slowly put down their hands and looked at the unscathed Uncle Meg and Amy, who was standing beside Meg with a chair in her hand. Both were dumbfounded. Siver's mouth also gaped open, and she slowly lowered the boomerang in her hand. Such terrifying explosive power was far beyond her own, and Amy was still asking her to help her catch sea beasts. Her feelings were a little complicated. After all, she had taken this mission so seriously before. In the end, when they arrived at the seaside, they could eat, drink, play, and even wear new clothes. They were also well protected. Enemy attack. The vampire was dumbfounded for a while before it came to its senses and let out a sharp warning. Bam! A folding chair flew over and sent it flying. Noisy. Amy caught the folding chair that was sent flying back. She did not forget to look at Chiwil and said, "Big Sister Chiwil, I learned it." Chiwil nodded with a complicated smile. "Aren't we here as guests? Why are we fighting? Where's Big Sister Camilla?" Anna asked with a puzzled expression. "Yeah, but they attacked first. I feel like Big Sister Camilla's name is not very useful," Mia said with a puzzled expression. Meg smiled and said, "Looks like Camilla's position as the chief is not stable enough. If Camilla had any authority in the vampires, these two small fries would not have dared to attack without any warning." Meg had already heard about the drama of father and daughter fighting for power. It was different from Connie. It was much harder for Camilla to force her way to the position than it was for Connie. From top to bottom, there were many voices of opposition. There were probably even more cases of overt compliance. The two vampires were sent flying and smashed through half of the castle. The ancient castles finally reacted. The vampires rose into the air and flew in this direction with hostility. Maynard was the first to fly over. It had been a long time since someone dared to wreak havoc in the vampire's territory. The last time was Rankster and Irina. That did not count. After all, it was not too embarrassing to be wrecked by these two. But who was it this time? Did they think that no one in the vampires could be bullied? Hundreds of vampires flew to the cliff and surrounded the ship. "Who is it? How dare you trespass into the vampire's territory and hurt my people?" Maynard shouted sternly. Meg recognized Maynard. He looked around and did not see Camilla. It seemed like they had come at the wrong time. She was not at home. "We are Camilla's friends. We came to the vampire's territory as guests." Those two just now did not know how to do things, so we taught them how to treat guests, Meg said to Maynard with a smile. Maynard sized Meg up. This man looked ordinary. He was just an ordinary human. However, in the face of so many vampires, ordinary humans wouldn't even be able to stand steadily under their terrifying pressure. How could they still be so calm? Camilla's friends? Maynard frowned. I am Camilla's father. You're just an ordinary human. How can you be her friend? Is there a difference in strength when making friends? Meg was surprised. I never care if they're strong or not when making friends. Maynard's face twitched. Of course, the strong would only be friends with the strong. The weak could only be looked down upon. What about me? Barbara asked Maynard with a smile as she stepped forward. You? Maynard looked at her and pondered seriously for a while. Suddenly, he looked shocked. You are the princess of the Moon Nation, Barbara? The vampire's expressions changed when they heard that. The encirclement expanded a lot. I wonder if I, the princess of the Moon Nation, am qualified to be friends with Big Sister Camilla? Barbara asked with a smile. Maynard smiled unnaturally. He nodded and said, of course. He did not expect Barbara to be on this inconspicuous little boat. The Moon Nation helped the Norland continent to seal the devil and was respected by all races. He did not want to offend Barbara. He looked around the crowd, and his gaze landed on Elizabeth. He said in surprise, You are Rankster's daughter? Yes. Elizabeth nodded with a cold voice. The vampires were in an uproar, and the encirclement dispersed immediately. In a chapter. Chapter 2294. On the Norland continent, there were two names that represented absolute power. One was Alex, and the other was Rankster. There was no doubt about Alex's power. Whether it was the countless powerhouses who had been defeated by him in the past, or his powerful performance when he sealed the devil twice, he was so powerful that people were convinced. And Rankster was the only man on the Norland continent who could go toe-to-toe with Alex. Whether it was the draw in the Pinnacle battle back then, or the battle with the 10 Pinnacle 10th-tier powerhouses in his demonized state in the far north not long ago, they were both terrifying. Therefore, when Elizabeth admitted that she was Rankster's daughter, all the vampires subconsciously dispersed. They didn't want her to misunderstand that they were hostile towards her. Rankster was a protective person. This was no secret on the Norland continent. Although the vampires were one of the top 10 demon tribes, they weren't confident enough to challenge Rankster. The muscles on Maynard's face trembled. Although he didn't want to admit it, he really didn't want to stand opposite Rankster. He didn't know how Camilla became friends with this princess of the Frost Dragon tribe and the princess of the Moon Nation, but friends were better than enemies. His gaze landed on Amy, and he frowned slightly. He felt that this little girl looked a little familiar. Amy waved the folding chair in her hand and said to Maynard provocatively, Do you want to try the folding chair too? Maynard suddenly remembered who she was. She was the disciple of Crassus and Julian, the little fellow who won the Magic Caster tournament in the Roth Empire. He had seen her portrait before. Maynard was a little annoyed to be provoked by a little fellow like this, but he didn't want to talk to her. Although Rankster was protective, he could still be slightly controlled. However, Crassus and Julian, these two old things, had no principles. If they knew that he bullied their precious disciple, he was afraid that they would raze all the castles on the vampire island to the ground tomorrow. Maynard didn't recognize any more people, but that was enough. Given the identities of these three, it was reasonable to say that they were Camilla's friends. Camilla was now the chief of the vampires. The chief's friends had to be treated properly. Camilla is not on the island. Please return. Although Maynard didn't want to get into a conflict with them, he couldn't be bothered to entertain these juniors. Hence, he directly asked them to leave. All right, we'll visit again next time. Meg nodded. He weighed the anchor and steered the ship away from Vampire Island. Just as Maynard had said, Camilla was not at home, so it was meaningless for them to be guests. They might as well go to the sea and have fun. What a bummer. I thought we could take on 10 of them, Amy said unhappily as she sat down on a folding chair. Everyone smiled when they heard this. If Big Sister Camilla knew that Amy had trashed her house, she would probably be unhappy, Mia said with a smile. Angela jumped down from the edge of the boat and said with a smile, "Since you can't go to Vampire Island, I'll take you to another place. I'm more familiar with the Demon Islands than you are. There are many fun places here. All right, I'll leave the rudder to you. You can go wherever you want." Meg gave up his seat. After all, he didn't have any particular destination he wanted to go to. Angela got her bearings, turned around, and steered into the fog. "Chief, are we going to let them go just like that? That little guy injured 2 of our clansmen. Yes, we can't let them go just like that." The vampires looked at the departing ship and said with righteous indignation, "Why? Do you still want them to stay for dinner? Is being beaten up by a 4-year-old child something to be proud of? Don't you think it's embarrassing enough? You've all embarrassed me." Maynard scolded with a black face. The vampires instantly felt embarrassed and kept quiet out of fear. "This little fellow is Krasu and Urian's disciple. If anyone thinks that they can compete with the 2 of them, go ahead and chase after him," Maynard said as he flew back to the castle. The vampires looked at each other and saw the relief in each other's eyes. Those 2 great magic casters were different from other magic casters. Even on the Demon Islands, they were famous, and ordinary people wouldn't dare to provoke them. As for the best way to infuriate the 2 of them at the same time, it was obviously to attack their only common disciple. This kind of thing didn't seem to have happened before, but no force or race on the Norland continent would want to try it. This ship came and went in a hurry. It didn't do anything, but the vampires couldn't help but think about what Camilla's friends would bring to the vampires. They might not be powerful themselves, but they all had powerful forces behind them. Camilla didn't have a strong foundation in the vampires. She was forcefully promoted by Dracula. When she wasn't around, the vampires still treated Maynard as their chief. However, it seemed like they still had to evaluate some of her relationships outside of the clan before they could calculate her real power. After all, she was the chief of the vampires in name now. This is a nameless archipelago. I named it the 100 Fruit Islands. Every island is very small, but there are all kinds of fruits on the islands. It includes almost all the fruits on the Demon Islands, and there are even a few unique fruits here. I used to love coming here to play. The ship passed through the fog. In the distance, small islands could be seen scattered on the surface of the sea like pearls. Angela stood at the bow of the ship and introduced the island to everyone. "If we stay here, we'll be super happy. We can eat all kinds of fruits tomorrow," Amy said expectantly as she lay on the edge of the ship. "If Amy likes it, we can build a small house here. We can come and stay here for a while when we're free." Meg stood beside Amy and patted her head lovingly. "There's no need to build a house. Don't we have a restaurant that can fly? We can just stay in a restaurant," Amy said shrewdly as she shook her head. "There's a ship over there. It seems like someone has already boarded the island," Anna said as she pointed into the distance. Everyone looked in the direction she was pointing at. There was indeed a small boat docked at the flat harbor in the distance. Someone actually discovered us? How infuriating! Angela stomped her feet and steered the ship towards the harbor. She wanted to see who had come to her private garden. Their ship docked, and there was no one in the ship beside them. They should have already gone ashore. "Let's go. Since we're all here, let's go ashore and take a look." Meg jumped off the ship first. As soon as he got ashore, he saw a blue cloth hanging on a tree branch. On it was written in blood, "Help. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.